An alienated tiger pressed against a young man. The stripes on the alienated tiger were shining brightly, and the gold and silver colors of the pair of alien-colored pupils further highlighted the unusualness of the alienated tiger. Ding Wen's left arm bone was broken, and the rib on his chest was also broken by the tiger's palm. His face and body were mixed with blood and sweat. At this moment, he was exhausted and could only wait to die. He did not regret that he tried to save a few strangers and fell into the tiger's mouth. Around Ding Wen, there were still several horrific scattered corpses. Some of them were slapped in the middle by the slap of the alienated tiger, and some had their necks bitten by the alienated tiger. This is Silent Ridge, the place where stars can gather, and there are many alienated beasts. Ding Wen didn't know why such a group of people went to the depths. As for himself, he originally chose this shortcut with the boldness of the art masters. Ding Wen looked at the fierce light in the eyes of the alienated tiger in front of him, and was secretly glad that a few people escaped with his help. Only, "You bastard! Today is death, and you need to know the price of cannibalism." Ding Wen tried his last strength, grabbed the broken sword under him and poked in when the alienated tiger opened his mouth to bite. The sword entered the tiger's mouth, and under the pain of the alienated tiger, he slapped Ding Wen's head with an angry slap. However, the position of the sword stab is clever, even if the alienated tiger has the ability to not be afraid of being injured, but no one has the dexterity of the fingers, and the sword cannot be drawn into the mouth. While struggling, the end of the broken sword plunged into the tiger's tongue. No matter how the alienated tiger rolled over and shook its head, how the tiger's palm stretched into its mouth in vain, and even slapped the tiger's head in anger, the sword in its mouth was still standing steadily. Plugged in. The alienated tiger struggled for a while, but his mouth could not be fully closed, so he kept it half open, and the pain was slightly better. Whenever the alienated tiger accidentally touched the sword in its mouth, it whimpered in pain. The corpses around the alienated tiger are all food, but it can't eat it. There is so much food in the mountains, but the alienated tiger got stuck in the mouth by Ding Wen's dying blow because he attacked people. Will it regret it? The alienated tiger collapsed suddenly. Without warning, he suddenly collapsed to the ground. It's dead? Tiger eyes, suddenly opened. In one golden and one silver pupils, there is a very different look from just now. Ding Wen remembered that after the death blow just now, his consciousness went black and he didn't know anything. Suddenly opening his eyes, he couldn't help but wonder why he didn't die. How do you see things are so grey? Ding Wen found that the scene in his eyes seemed to be covered with grey. He couldn't help raising his hand and rubbing his eyes, and was startled. What? Ding Wen jumped up in surprise, because the hand he raised was not his. But after standing up, Ding Wen saw something even more startling not far in front of him. There was a corpse whose head looked like a rotten watermelon. But what's more terrifying than that head is that this corpse is wearing the same clothes and pants as Ding Wen. No, the body, arms, legs are all exactly the same as Ding Wen. Ding Wen looked at him, confused, and subconsciously lowered his head to look at himself. Unexpectedly, when he lowered his head, Ding Wen screamed in horror. Roar! Ding Wen turned his head left and right in shock when he heard the tiger's roar, and then saw the tiger's tail, and immediately continued to turn around nervously. Always behind him. It's bad, bad. To be bitten to death by that beast. Ding Wen almost thought of the danger that he would be in a tiger's mouth and his back would be attacked at any time. But Alienation Tiger has never attacked Ding Wen for some reason. As Ding Wen turned around like this, he suddenly realized what had scared him just now. He just lowered his head and saw the tiger claw, so he screamed in fright, but he didn't hear his own cry, only the roar of the alienated tiger. No, why am I so short? Squatting as high as a tiger's butt? Ding Wen thought about it for a while, and suddenly suspected that he was dead. Maybe his head was bitten by the alienated tiger in his mouth, but he was not dead yet, and he still had consciousness. The question is solved. Ding Wenzheng was panicking and restless, and his body perception became clearer and clearer. He could feel himself spinning in circles, and he could also feel the heavy force of his limbs stepping on the ground. Ding Wen stopped, and the tigers in his eyes didn't move either. He looked at the tiger's tail and tried to move. The tail swung up. Ding Wen lowered his head, saw the tiger's palm, raised his palm, and saw blood on the tiger's palm. If he wanted tiger palm to be lifted, he would lift it up, and if he wanted to put it down, he would put it down. What's the situation? I've become an alienated tiger. Ding Wen finally understood the real situation. Ding Wen didn't know what happened to him, but he was dead, and his head was smashed by the alienated tiger. The corpse was himself, and the memory of the alienated tiger was also evidence. But what happened to him? What should he do? Can he be turned back into a human? How can he turn back into a human? Ding Wen took tiger steps and walked aimlessly in the mountains and forests. He still remembered his own affairs, and at the same time he also knew about this alienated tiger. This alienated tiger was chased away by his parents when he became an adult, and he found a place to live on his own. This is the tiger's helplessness, otherwise the food would not be enough. In the memory of the alienated tiger, he was afraid of the natural star energy barrier in Silent Mountain, but it was daring and felt that even its parents dared not enter the barrier. There should be a lot of food in it, so it passed through the barrier. Later, the tiger strayed into a place in Silent Ridge, and since then it has become an alienated tiger. Its physique has been transformed by star energy, and it is strong and capable of killing its own kind at will. Non-alienated creatures have no power to fight it. The memory of the alienated tiger stopped 3 days ago, and the last memory was troubled by the sword in the tiger's mouth. Ding Wen already knew that the alienated tiger didn't regret attacking humans, but that he didn't kill him earlier. Ding Wen also regretted that he should not have given the alienated tiger a death blow. However, at that time, he never dreamed that he would become an alienated tiger. If he could predict this, he would definitely not put a sword in his mouth. Yes, the sword was still in the tiger's mouth, that is, in Ding Wen's mouth. Ding Wen has been hungry for 3 days. Tigers eat raw meat, he refuses, and he refuses to eat human corpses. But if he is hungry and can't stand it anymore, catching deer, wild boars and other eating raw meat, he thinks it's okay to endure it for a while. However, with the sword in his mouth, he could only starve. He has already thought of many ways with human wisdom, even looking for various branches, holding the sword and sticking it into his mouth. However, if the strength is too small, I can't move, but the strength is too strong. The branch was cut by the sword. What else can Ding Wen say? He could only sigh that the pedestrian's sword was too sharp. He also had to sigh that although tiger palms are powerful, they are still not as dexterous as human hands. Are humans helpless with something stuck in their mouths? However, the tiger club, the mighty alienized tiger, is also helpless with the sword in his mouth. Ding Wen wanted to use stones to make tools to hook out the sword, but tiger palm didn't allow him to make stone tools. Forget it, I'll starve to death, anyway, I don't want to be a beast, I'll die sooner rather than later. Ding Wen collapsed to the ground. After a few days of starvation and walking for a few days, he was too tired to walk. And do not want to leave. Cold, sleepy, and tiredness struck, so Ding Wen closed his eyes. Hot. Ding Wen opened his eyes and found that he hadn't starved to death yet, and he felt uncomfortable under the scorching sun. Although I'm waiting to die, I don't want to suffer. Ding Wen dragged his weak body, climbed to the shade, closed his eyes, and continued to wait for death. A young man, who didn't know what tune he was humming, passed by with a bag on his back, and when he found the alienated tiger, he smiled happily, with the joy of eating tiger meat in his eyes. This boy grew up in Silent Mountain. His master passed away not long ago. He was going to the outside world. As soon as I set off, I encountered an alienated tiger. If the tiger meat is packed and used as food rations, I can manage it all the way. The young man dragged the alienated tiger home, put away the baggage, picked up the knife, looked at the dying tiger, and said, "You are starving like this, and you will die. If you meet me, you will be lucky. I will give you a good time and save you from suffering." After the young man spoke, he raised his sword and dropped it. After that, the boy maintained the posture of holding the knife, and stayed there, motionless. Suddenly, the boy's dull eyes lit up as if he had come to life. The alienated tiger is dead, and the boy's sword is very powerful. Ding Wen lowered his head and looked at his hands and feet. It should be said that they were the hands, feet, and body of the knife-wielding boy. Ding Wen didn't understand why he was in such a peculiar state, but he really became this young man again. "Hey, hey, are you still here? Promise if you are here, I didn't mean to rob you of your body, and I don't know what happened, and I don't know how to leave and return your body to you. Hello, are you still there?" Ding Wen shouted over and over in his mind, but there was no response, so he shouted again, but still no response. The original owner of this body really disappeared without a trace, just like after he suddenly turned into an alienated tiger, the alienated tiger didn't know where he went. Ding Wen remembered who he was and knew about this young man. "I suddenly became you, and I don't know the reason. You, like me, learned your skills from the master, and are all ready to go to see the world outside. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about or thinking, but things are it's already like this. It's probably what my master often said about the fate of immortality. Let's watch the world outside together, let's eat the meat of this beast." Ding Wen carried his burden and brought the marinated and air-dried tiger meat. Set off. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. On the road, Ding Wen found that the boy's body was very strong, almost like an alienated tiger. With one punch, the tree breaks. 1 foot, the stone is broken. With one leap, it was several dozen feet high. Ding Wen was amazed again and again. He felt that he had practiced as hard as this young man since he was a child. Why is there such a big gap? Ding Wen has also been practicing in the mountains with an anonymous master since he was a child. A few days ago, the master suddenly left a letter without saying goodbye, saying that their relationship between master and apprentice was exhausted, and his ability was small enough that he could go down the mountain. It's just that this young man has never learned any stunts, and his master didn't teach it. The determination to cultivate should be to strengthen the body. It was getting dark, and Ding Wen was also hungry. He looked out of the cliff and saw that there was a convex stone below, so he jumped down and prepared to sleep on the stone to avoid being attacked by wild beasts at night. This is the consciousness that he cultivated while living on the mountain. The boy with this body also has this kind of consciousness. As for finding the convex stones outside the cliff, it is this boy's habit, and Ding Wen thinks this is a good idea. The howling wind, the deep cliff, the subconscious fear, and the process of consciously fighting against this fear are the excitement that makes the heart beat faster. Ding Wen stepped on the convex stone, which was not a difficult operation in the young man's memory. However, Ding Wen stepped on the slippery thing, his body fell forward involuntarily, and then slammed his head on the stone. His consciousness went black, and he fainted. Book friends have been waiting for a long time. I hope this new book will not only make you feel fun, but also have other joys. Because the book has just been reviewed, the subsequent chapters need to be simplified. Before April 4th, one chapter will be updated every day, and the normal update will begin on April 5th. Thank you for your support. The red sun hidden behind the white clouds gradually revealed his face, and the increasingly bright sun shone on the heaven and the earth, and also enveloped a young man on the raised stone outside the cliff. Ding Wen's eyelids moved slightly, he opened his eyes, but couldn't stand the strong light, so he squinted quickly. He hasn't gotten used to the light yet, so he got confused first. Who I am? Where am I? Ding Wen stood up with his hands on his body and clenched his fists. He felt a little weak and his fists were not very strong. He looked at himself. He was wearing multicolored old cloth and sewed clothes. He was barefoot. The thick calluses on the soles of his feet seemed to be insoles. He didn't feel pain when stepping on sharp stones. He touched all over his body, only half of the pasta he had eaten. As he ate the bread, he slowly remembered more and more things in his mind. His name is Ding Wen, and the name of the original owner of this body, let alone mention it. He and the boy with this body happened to be abandoned babies, and they both grew up with master on the mountain. This young man's master passed away a few days ago, and the young man decided to go down the mountain to take a look at the outside world. The young man's master said that with his ability, he would definitely have a place in the world. In this regard, the young man once asked his master, "Everything in the world has a place. What does his place look like?" However, the young master just smiled without saying a word. Ding Wen suspects that this young man's master is just ignorant and pretentious, because this young man's master is always so unpredictable that he can predict the future, but he doesn't even know when he will die. The boy's master went to squat for a while before he died. Just squat. If you don't go to the hut, you have to squat in the wild. As a result, people are cold on a pool of filth. I don't want this anymore. Ding Wen slowed down and continued to eat the noodles. The memory of this young man in this body for the master to pack up the funeral really affected his appetite. Ding Wen recalled that when he jumped off last night, unexpectedly there was oil on the rock. There is oil on the convex stone outside the cliff. So Ding Wen slipped, knocked his head on the rock and fainted. So far, Ding Wen still can't figure out why there is oil on the bumps outside the cliffs in this remote mountain forest. This young man's master always said that his ability to hit a tree with his head is useless, and he really can't stand it. Ding Wen had something in his stomach after eating the noodle cake. The stone grasped hard, the gravel fell. Ding Wen looked at the bottom of the cliff where the gravel fell, and muttered happily, "It's a pity that a large package of tiger jerky is lost." The stone under Ding Wen's feet was more than 20 feet high from the cliff, but when he saw that he was stepping on the gap he just grabbed with his bare hands, he jumped up, and then stepped on the convex stone above and jumped again. He jumped again and went up 4 times in a row. Ding Wen set foot on the ground, feeling still hungry in his stomach, thinking that his burden fell off the cliff. He still had to go back and prepare something to eat before he set off. Ding Wen didn't feel bad, he just thought it was a good thing. Ding Wen looked at one side of the rolling mountains, his eyes were full of longing for the outside world, he couldn't help but open his mouth and took a deep breath, trying to turn his expectations into a passionate cry. Boom! A stone fell from the sky and smashed down beside Ding Wen, frightening his screams back into his stomach. Ding Wen looked sideways suspiciously, the landslide would not have caused such a movement. But if it weren't for the landslide and rocks, the only animals on the mountain that could throw stones would be the apes. However, in my memory, this young man was so obedient that he never had the guts to do this. That revengeful crow threw it. But after 2 years of reconciliation, it won't suddenly lose its trust. It can't even hold such a big stone. Ding Wen was puzzled. As for people, he automatically ruled it out, because in the memory of the young man, he has never seen any other living person except his master since he grew up in this mountain group. There are no crows in the sky, and there are no monkeys on the trees beside Ding Wen. But a person rolled down on in the forest. Ding Wen saw that the man had no struggle to save himself, so he rolled down like that, his legs hit the tree body, the rolling momentum changed slightly, and then, by accident, his head hit the stone, and his body was thrown away for a while, volleying into the air. Rolling and falling to low places, continuing to roll, slide and fall on the dead leaves that cover the slopes. Did you fall dizzy? Ding Wen saw that the man finally stopped, his head and face buried in the dead leaves in the depression, and there was no movement at all. Ding Wen leaned over, squatted down, pushed the man over and turned over, and pushed the man's chest again, thinking to himself, what are you stuffing so bulging? The people outside are really strange. The ones attacked by the tiger also seem to have a lot of stuff in their chests. How come the stuff is still so soft? The man was motionless. Ding Wen pushed against the man's chest and shouted, "Hello? Hey, wake up, are you still alive?" Hey, the man still didn't move. Ding Wen saw blood flowing from the man's stomach, and pulled up the man's dirty clothes. He found that it was a sword wound, and the wound was long and deep. He looked at the blood on the sword that the man was still holding tightly. He couldn't help sighing and said, "You were wounded by your own sword. You are wronged enough." Hey? This sword, it turns out to be you. A few days ago, Ding Wen used this type of sword to rescue the person who was rescued from the alienation tiger's mouth. He quickly probed for his pulse and found that he was already dead. It's a pity that this person's original shiny clothes are so dirty and torn. At this moment, someone fell from the mountain again. This time it's alive. The man tried his best to save himself when he fell, trying to catch something to slow down the fall, and even tried to stick his sword to the ground several times, but he always failed to find the right angle. However, the impact of those rocks and trees on the way was avoided. Seeing that the man actively supported the ground when he fell, let his body be thrown out in advance, avoided a raised stone in time, and finally rolled down for a while. Soon he tenaciously supported his severely injured body with one hand, half squatted, half kneeled and straightened up, looking up at the direction where he fell. In the forest, a group of people jumped out one after another, all with bows and arrows, and long knives hanging from their waists. "What's the matter with you? Are you still wrestling one by one?" Ding Wen walked over to the person who fell, wondering why this group of people appeared here. He was very happy that so many people suddenly appeared in the uninhabited mountains. Just by looking at his back, he knew that it was the one who was especially good-looking among the people who escaped from the tiger's mouth that day. "This person is very thin and has long hair," Ding Wen couldn't help but muttered to himself. "Master always said that I didn't take care of my hair diligently, but I didn't expect people outside to be lazier than me. How many years would it take to keep such long hair?" "What?" The person who fell suddenly turned his head and looked at Ding Wen with a murderous look, but in the next instant his suspicions were relieved, and he quickly turned around, still looking at the group of people who came down from the hillside. Taking a quick glance, Ding Wen could only see the blood on the man's face, as well as the eyes of a trapped beast fighting to the death. When Ding Wen approached, he saw that the man had blood on his legs, his upper body was shaking involuntarily, and he seemed to be trying his best to endure the pain. He couldn't help asking, "Where else is injured?" The man glanced at him again, saw his gaze on his chest, and said coldly, "You can help me get out of trouble, and when I get better, you can fulfill your wish, and the right should be rewarded." Ding Wen was a little puzzled. First, he didn't know what wishes he needed from this person. Second, he didn't know why this person asked for help like this. While he was puzzled, the man's tone became more urgent, and he urged, "What are you still doing? Come back with me. You won't be left alive when they come down." Ding Wen glanced at the group of people, and then asked the person in surprise, "Were you shot down by them? You just understand." The man urged again, "Take me away." Ding Wen was not in a hurry and asked, "Why are they chasing you?" The man saw the group of people who came down quickened their pace. The few in front had already drawn their bows and arrows, so they didn't have the time to pay attention to him. The man running in front stretched his bow and was about to shoot, and a man with a scar on his forehead laughed and shouted, "Keep it alive! Let's taste the taste of the fairy goddess in the sky first. I'm afraid there will be no first time in this life. Second chance like this. If you don't have enough fun, why are you willing to kill me?" The man at the front smiled mysteriously, slightly adjusted the direction of the arrow, and shot with his hands. The arrow shot straight at Ding Wen. Suanv, who fell, was waiting to be rescued by swinging her sword, but she saw Ding Wen swung the arrow casually, and had already sent the flying arrow into the sky. The mysterious girl beside her frowned slightly, and there was a bit of surprise in her eyes. The group of people who chased after him didn't take Yamano's face, who was dressed in multicolored rags and was inferior to the beggars outside. Read www.yuyuganshu.com was moved at this time. The few people in front loosened their strings, and when the scarred-faced man who took the lead in the back stepped forward, they spread out in a semicircle and raised their bows. The man with scarred face knew that Suan's leg injury was not serious, and he was not afraid that she would be able to run. He just looked at Ding Wen and saw that he was stronger than ordinary hunters. However, that's all, it's still the mortal body of the earth world, not the fairy body of Xianmen, so he smiled and said, since the little brother is a person of the earth, you have some ability. Today the mysterious girl of Xianmen also let me you enjoy the taste and follow me in the future. Why stay in a place like Silent Ridge where birds don't shit? Don't listen to them. If you can help me get out of trouble today, I can make you a disciple of the Sunny Sky Immortal sect. Suan could only hope that the villagers around her would be able to get her out of trouble, and found that he was very capable. Don't miss out on life-saving straws. Master said that people outside are complicated. Originally, I was worried that you were a bad person, but now I can be sure that no matter why you were hunted down by them, this group of people is definitely worse than you. Ding Wen had already made a judgment. Because this group of people didn't say a word, it was a deadly arrow against him, and they killed innocent people indiscriminately, so what else could be expected? Little brother, we are all from the world, that's why I'm talking to you about this. Don't think she's a mysterious girl from Xianmen and just treat her as a kind person. What she said is to deceive you and don't know about the outside world. Live in the sky. The immortals won't let people from our realm go up so easily. Before the Scarface finished speaking, Ding Wen shouted impatiently and interrupted, you don't need to say it. My master said that the words of a bad person are like a fox pretending to be dead, don't believe it once. I won't help you. I have saved this person, you can go. Scarface was stunned for a while, then smiled. The group of people around Scarface all laughed. They understood the ignorance of the young Yamano Hideo in front of them, but they still decided to silence him. So Scarface laughed enough, finally stopped, and deliberately teased Ding Wen and said, since you want to let us go, then I will give you a chance, now hold Suan for us, and I will not kill you. The person next to Scarface couldn't help laughing loudly, because he remembered the fate of the last unlucky ghost that Scarface promised not to kill, and was thrown into the wild in one breath, and in the end he didn't know if it was fed to the beast, or to give up after suffering enough. Let's go, don't force me to do it. Ding Wen was very disappointed, and he was full of reverie about the outside world. Today, before he entered the outside world, he unexpectedly met so many people, but unfortunately they were a bunch of bad people. He hoped that sincere persuasion would make these people change their minds, so he filled his eyes with sincerity and said, this is the first time I've seen people outside when I grew up, please leave immediately and don't force me to do it. Because although I am very reluctant to do something with others, my master said that in the outside world, the task of eliminating evil is all that is needed, so if you force me to do it, I will not let you go. Fool! Before Scarface could speak, a man with a bow had already shot an arrow unbearably. A bow was moved, and several other people immediately cooperated with the tacit agreement to release the arrow. They don't have the patience of a scarred face, and they don't think there is anything to talk about with a mountain and wild man. It's their desire to kill quickly and play the arrogant fairy goddess. 8 arrows flew out. Scarface felt a little pity, he was willing to chat with the young man who grew up in the mountains. But obviously, there is no chance. In Silent Mountain, Suanv, who is as strong as the immortal sect, can't use any immortal stunts, so it is impossible for them to be the opponent of their group. In Silent Mountain, there are so many people with bows and arrows, even if there are a few more mysterious girls, they will not take it seriously. I don't know that the powerful Yamano man, no matter how strong he is, will die. Scarface was thinking about the next pleasant activity, and just as the fantasy image came to his mind, it was suddenly shattered. Scar's face was shocked to see that the body of Yamano Hiroshi next to Suinu seemed to have suddenly become thicker. This is Scarface flashed an unbelievable thought, a thought that he couldn't accept. When this thought flashed through him, Dingwen blows like the wind. The swaying figure swept past the 8 arrows slamming from different angles, and I saw the fast image of his hands shaking, but he did not see his momentum stop, but rushed towards the Scarface extremely quickly. The 2 people beside Scarface drew their knives and slashed towards Kuai Ying. Before the knife fell, Scarface saw the 2 fell backwards and flew off the ground, but he hadn't waited for the 2 people with their feet off the ground to be thrown out, and the hand holding the knife in the scar-faced face had already been grabbed by Dingwen, and his bones would be shattered by the grip. However, before Scarface could find out if his arm was broken, he was suddenly punched in the chest. At this moment, Scar's face seemed to be hit by a mountain, his chest collapsed and sunk in, and then his feet left the ground, his body was thrown flying, breaking the tree, and fell to the ground. When Scarface's vision gradually blurred, he saw that the 8 bow holders were all pierced by arrows. When is it? Could it be that the arrows they shot were all shot back halfway, and all the 8 arrows accurately reflected the 8 people? Scarface's consciousness quickly became confused. He vaguely knew what was wrong with him, but he didn't know why it happened. He didn't believe that a Yamano man would have this kind of power. If it weren't for Silent Hill, I will never capsize in the gutter. Scarface's consciousness plunged into darkness. But if it weren't for Silent Hill, would Suin fall into such a situation? Not necessarily. If it weren't for Silent Hill, no matter how talented this group of people was, Suin was confident that they could at least retreat calmly. Silent Mountain makes the star energy in the body unable to communicate with the outside world, so all kinds of skills can't be used. No matter how many immortal stunts you know, when you come to Silent Mountain, you can only return to the most primitive fighting state. Suinv, who has an immortal body, is no match for the siege of a group of experts in the realm here. However, Dingwen dealt with this group of people as easily as cutting melons and vegetables. Afterwards, Dingwen's swollen muscles shrunk by 2 more circles, and the nearly broken line on his clothes finally relieved the pressure, and he returned to the fit state of multicolored rags. This person actually has the body of chaos. Such an age is by no means attainable by self-cultivation, it must be chosen by the Protoss. The person from Hidden Love Peak didn't mention this, thinking that he was afraid that I would not tolerate it. Suin thought about it for a while, and she gave birth to a lot of cares. Dingwen took Suinv back to Hidden Love Peak, and there were 2 more people from Suinv. They said that they had been attacked and separated, and after finally resolving the attacking enemy, they came back to find Suinv to join. Suinv said that the hermit from Hidden Love Peak was a friend of the Daking faction, and this time she came to get the same spiritual thing that was bred in the hidden treasure field of Hidden Love Peak. Talking about why he asked him for help just now, and why he was so relieved, Suinu smiled and said, "Because you can tell by looking at your dress that you must be a disciple of Immortal Yinking Peak. Immortal Yinking Peak is a friend of our Daking Immortal sect, and of course you are too." Dingwen thought it was unbelievable, the master of the boy with this body? He didn't have much fighting power, and finally died in a pool of filth. What kind of immortals from the Hidden Love Peak? However, what Dingwen is most puzzled is, why do people outside like to stuff so many things into their chests? In Suinv's words, she saw that Dingwen's eyes were still wandering on the bulge of the 3 of them, and she smiled and said, "When the spiritual treasure is found, and the injury recovers a little, I will definitely not forget my promise to you." She still remembers her promise to let me join the Daking Xian faction. Words count. Master said that such people are worthy of trust. Dingwen was in a good mood and felt that he had not saved the wrong person. Especially, he actually saved Suinv twice. Dingwen pointed to the back of the wooden house on Hidden Love Peak and said, "This is the treasure trove, How can there be any treasure? When the master named it, the treasure is the corn planted. Did you come to the wrong place when you came here to hunt for treasure? Already. Suan quickly found a big rock on the edge of the field according to the sign she remembered, and said, "It's that rock." The two female disciples who came with them hurriedly stepped forward and used their swords to exert their strength. However, the Xing Neng in the body could not be released, but the stars were smashed to pieces. Is waiting to raise the sword and charge again. I'm coming. Suan drew her sword in her hand, and she charged a sword, and she cut into 3 inches. The two female disciples hurriedly applauded and said, "Xian Nuxing can cultivate to a high level, much better than us." Suan was actually not satisfied, she felt it could be better. She secretly pulled out her sword and was about to slash again, but saw Ding Wen holding up the big stone impatiently, her palms against the stone left and right on both sides. Yunjin let out a low drink, and the big stones half a zhang wide and 1 chi high suddenly shattered and fell into piles. Before Suan and the two female disciples could be surprised, they saw a 7-colored oval object falling down and buried by gravel. Suan was busy going forward, but Ding Wen had already picked it up first. He was curiously facing the moonlight, and saw that this thing was translucent, with 7 rainbow-like colors flowing in it. It also feels round and comfortable, even if he doesn't know it, he still thinks it is a treasure. There are really treasures in the stone. He never went out, how did he tell you? He didn't even say anything about it. Ding Wen thought of his own master, but he didn't know it either. The two female disciples of the immortal sect didn't like people from the realm at first, and because of Ding Wen's attention, they secretly hated them, and shouted angrily, "Hand over the rainbow heart jade!" Ding Wen came to just take a look out of curiosity. Seeing that the two people were still young men before and after, they suddenly turned their faces and said, "What if I don't want to give it to you? It's not enough if I don't give you the things from my vegetable field." The two female disciples of the immortal sect suspected that he was deliberately trying to seize the treasure, and they drew their swords in anger and were about to do it. Suan hurriedly resisted, turned to look at Ding Wen with a smile, and said to herself, "I guess the young man doesn't care about rainbow heart jade, right? In fact, the young man doesn't have to worry. Xia does not believe what he says? I will definitely repay the kindness of the young hero for saving his life." Since the rainbow heart jade was found together, of course, the young hero also deserves the credit. The two female disciples were even more indignant. They didn't understand why Suan had such a good attitude, and said unwillingly, "Why should Suan be tolerant to such a reckless man? For his disrespectful attitude towards Suan, he should have given it a long time ago. How many times has he died? Even if he has been kind to Suan 10 or 8 times, he has already paid off." Suan saw that Ding Wen's expression was already relaxed, but she changed her polite attitude just now, and suddenly ordered in a cold tone, "Okay. Then kill him." "It's ordered." The two female disciples were refreshed and thrust their swords from left and right to stab Ding Wen's heart and abdomen. Unexpectedly, the corners of Ding Wen's mouth raised slightly, and he threw his hands in disapproval, hitting the two swords that were stabbing with precision. Beside, the two female disciples of the immortal sect did not expect that the despised Shanyi Fifu was so powerful. In addition to their astonishment, they saw a cold light flashing across the necks of the two female disciples, so the shock in their eyes was filled with confusion. Suan killed 2 of her own people with 1 sword, but she wiped off the blood on the headless corpse with her sword in disapproval. Then she put the sword back into the sheath, and then looked at Ding Wen Zanyan with a questioning face and said with a smile, "Ambush me." The villains in the gang must have cooperated with them inside and out. There were originally 5 people who came to Silent Mountain with them, but only 2 of them were safe. Just now they deliberately encouraged them again and again, clearly wanting to provoke us into conflict. "Nothing more than I want to use you and me to make plots when we fight. Of course I have to do it first. Although I don't like to take the initiative to harm others, I will never be polite to those who harm me." You people from the Daking faction like to murder each other so much. Ding Wen looked at the two female disciples who were in different places, and looked at the bulge on their bodies curiously. Then the drums. He thought that the people of the Xianpai probably sewed the pockets for stuff into the clothes, otherwise, why would everyone be stuffed with such drums? How could Suan know that he had never seen a woman before, so he would have such strange thoughts? I thought he didn't even let the body go, and couldn't help thinking, in Silent Mountain, it is impossible to win his chaos body, not to mention my leg injury is not healed at the moment, and it is impossible to even escape. Seeing that his mind is full of those colored thoughts, he doesn't know what Rainbow Heart Jade is. He is so impatient and clearly does not allow me to procrastinate. Anyway, no one will know about dealing with him once, so let's take expedient measures. The Daking faction also has sellers who seek glory. Suan put on a smile, looked at the wooden house and said, however, I will repay my kindness and keep my word. The smell of blood here is heavy, let's go inside the house. Let me repay your life-saving grace and fulfill your wish. What is the wish? Why don't I know it myself? Ding Wen really couldn't guess, but he was happy to move to the house, which was better than facing two corpses. You don't know, but I know. Suan's eyes were full of charm. Ding Wen felt his blood boil for no reason. He didn't understand what happened to him, but he felt that Suan looked very beautiful at the moment. The sound is also particularly nice. The sky in Silent Mountain is getting darker, and there is no light in the wooden house. As soon as Ding Wen entered the door, he caught the attack in the dark, so he slapped the stabbing sword and shouted angrily, "What are you doing?" Unexpectedly, he felt a fiery mass approaching him, his body was held by Suanv, and he felt her other palm gently resting on his neck. I just heard Suanv's voice softly say, "You are so strong, just kidding you. Now my knife is on your neck, you have to listen to me." Ding Wen had some doubts about the true intentions of Suanv's sword just now, but he felt that the warmth that came over was beyond words, so he didn't have any deep thoughts and just left at the mercy of Suanv. In the darkness, Ding Wen touched the truth and exclaimed, "It's not luggage stuffed inside." In the dark, Ding Wen remembered what Master had said about women in the past, only to realize that there were so many mysteries. After being so busy for a while, Xian Nu saw that Ding Wen had leaked out of her energy, so she groped for the Rainbow Heart Jade. She was secretly proud of how easy it was to get her hands. She got up and walked out of the wooden door, just raised the Rainbow Heart Jade to look at the moonlight. Suddenly a hand stretched out behind her, dragged her back in, and she was startled and whispered, "You still are you not tired?" After half an hour, Suan walked out of the wooden door exhaustedly holding the Rainbow Heart Jade. She didn't want to appreciate the jade anymore, she just wanted to go to the well to fetch water. However, Ding Wen's hand stretched out from behind her and dragged her into the room. "Aren't you going to take a break?" Xian Envy was almost desperate, only to find that it was too difficult to deal with. Such a good thing needs to be continued, and it must be more active than practicing. In Ding Wen's voice, he didn't feel tired at all. Another half an hour later. In the darkness, Xian Envy could only make a weak, occasional hum. Another half an hour later. In the darkness, Ding Wen pushed and shouted anxiously, "What's wrong with you, Xian Envy? Are you all right? You're not dead. I want to rest. Oh, tell me if you're tired. Your body is not good, you're tired so soon, and you need to exercise more in the future." Ding Wen looked disgusted. In his opinion, the physique of the immortal sect disciple was simply too weak, but when he said that, he also spared Suan and let her cultivate with peace of mind. The next day, the sun shone into the house and fell on Xian Nu's face. When she opened her eyes, she saw Ding Wen sitting cross-legged on the edge of the bed practicing the exercises. She hurriedly closed her eyes and continued to pretend to be asleep, but her eyes were already on her. "Wake up! Let's continue." Ding Wen was very excited, and Xian Nu was frightened, but she was calm, and pretended to be gentle. It will be long in the future, you should accompany me to leave Silent Ridge and go back first. Come back, Xianmen has the rules of Xianmen. I was injured and delayed for a night. If I go back late, it will not only be ineffective, but also at fault. Let's go. Ding Wen happily agreed. Suan secretly let out a sigh of relief, and seeing that he was soft, she always showed a gentle gesture and hid the face she met at the beginning of yesterday. Ding Wen saw that Suan's leg injury had not healed. Although she was able to walk, it was too slow, so she simply carried her on her back and didn't feel much burden. Anyway, Suan was much lighter than a wild boar. When passing by the edge of the cliff yesterday, Ding Wen remembered the oil on the ledge outside the cliff, and mentioned it casually, but unexpectedly heard Suan say, "The oil sent by the people in Dija village has a smell." I opened it and threw it away. It's really my fault to make you slip, and when you leave Silent Ridge, let me compensate you as well as I did last night. Ding Wen suddenly felt that it was okay to fall before, but after recollecting the taste, he couldn't help but say, "It's not easy to squeeze oil, there is vegetable oil on the stone, if you don't like it, it's better to go back and give it to others? Throw it away? What a pity, people must care. It's mine if I take it. If I ask them to take it back, they will annoy me because I'm not thoughtful. The whole village will have to kowtow in fear and apologize." Suan knew that Ding Wen didn't know what was going on outside, and added, "The world has been able to survive because of the blessings of the fairy sect. It is a great honor for them to have the opportunity to contribute." Ding Wen heard Master say that there are always evil creatures on the earth that are invaded and alienated by the aura of chaos. Only the stunts of the immortal faction can restrain them. However, Ding Wen was dubious about this statement, and asked instead, "The people from the realm are not capable of killing evil creatures. The evil things that Chaos Star can transform can only be restrained by fairy magic." Suanu's tone was very proud, but after thinking about it, Ding Wen has the body of chaos, which is similar to those evil things. Thinking of this, Xian Nu felt hesitant in her heart. She originally had no good plans for Ding Wen, but after getting along for a short time, she found that he did not seem to be difficult to control. If she carefully prepared a speech, it should be able to make Ding Wen useful in the realm. After all, his body of chaos is also in the realm. Unacceptable ability. Only Suan was also afraid that people from Xianmen would know about her and Ding Wen's stay in Silent Mountain, which would definitely affect her future. Suan secretly planned the journey, and after walking like this for 7 days and 7 nights, she was finally about to leave Silent Ridge. Suan tried to tell Ding Wen about the situation. In short, the Daking faction had some etiquette rules, so Ding Wen could not let anyone know what happened between them. When others asked, they just said that they were silent. Ling helped Suan a favor. Ding Wen questioned righteously, "You said that one night husband and wife are 100 days of grace, we are the closest relationship, and suddenly we can't let people know? Why can't people know? What's the shame? I'm the mysterious daughter of the Daking faction. You must first ask the head for permission to do anything with you, otherwise people will think that I'm arrogant, and those who fight with me make fuss. You should be considerate of me. Can't you?" Suan remembered that Ding Wen was soft, so she put her hand on his leg. The pitiful face, especially the pair of tearful eyes, could melt everyone. "I heard from the master that whatever path you choose, you will be who you are. You shouldn't be sneaky about upright things. I'll take care of them for you who are embarrassing you. If you're afraid of your boss, I'll tell you for you." Ding, there is a lot of pride in the language, and there is no respect for the Daking faction at all, and there is no reverence for the head of the Daking faction. But when Suan listened to it, she only felt that he was ignorant. "I have this attitude towards you, a lowly person, but you still don't know how to praise me. Since you are so out of control, what's the use of keeping you?" Xian Nu secretly made a decision. Because Suan did not dare to anger Ding Wen, who has a body of chaos in Silent Mountain, she has always pretended to be gentle and considerate. This kind of behavior made her feel humiliated. Of patience. Walking down the last hillside, through a barren field, the translucent 7-color light curtain in Ding Wen's eyes was getting closer and clearer. Silent Mountain is surrounded by 7-color chaotic rainbow light, and when you see the chaotic rainbow light, you will walk to the border of Silent Mountain. After passing the light curtain, it is the outside world. Ding Wen couldn't help but quicken his pace, but unexpectedly, the suanf he was carrying couldn't wait to jump down and ran over despite the leg injury, which made Ding Wen hurriedly reminded, "Slow down, be careful, the injury aggravates." Suan ran across the light curtain with a deaf ear. Through the translucent colored chaotic rainbow light, Ding Wen saw the golden light flashing on Suan's body, and then she flew up with her feet off the ground, and at the same time, the clothes she was wearing were suddenly burned by the fire, and the golden light surrounding her body gathered and formed, turning into a golden robe. The light blue light flowed from head to toe, and finally turned into grey-black sewage and fell on the ground. All the dust on Xian Nu's hair, face, neck, and body was washed away, and her fair skin was faintly luminous. Ding Wen watched Suan's transformation in surprise. Seeing that her whole person was completely new, the original sword was also wrapped in golden light, and it was as dazzling as her. This is the real appearance of Xianmen disciples. It's so beautiful. Ding Wen didn't blink, the heat in his eyes even surpassed that night. It's just. Is Suan flying too fast or too high? Flying too high, I can't see clearly. Ding Wen shouted loudly, running quickly across the chaotic rainbow light, and shouted again at the black spot in the sky, "Suanv." Suanv, however, the black spot in the air got higher and higher, and finally disappeared into the clouds. Are you in a hurry to return to your life? Then say it. Ding Wen was a little dissatisfied, thought about it, and shouted, "Suanv, I'm waiting for you here." In the sky, there are only white clouds, and the rest is the sound of gusts of wind. The cloud layer gradually moved away, revealing something at one end. Ding Wen watched curiously, looked at the exposed part, and as the cloud layer moved away, a larger and larger outline appeared. It turned out that it was a huge mountain floating in the air. Towering and towering, suspended in midair, even if the distance is far, you still feel even more insignificant when you look up. That is, the Daking Immortal faction? Ding Wen looked at it and muttered to himself, because Xian Shan could never be seen in Silent Hill, nor could he be seen where he used to live. Then, it is the Daking Immortal sect. Suan returned to the Immortal sect alone to return to her life. Ever since Suan discovered that Ding Wen was out of control, she wanted to avoid future troubles forever, but later she felt that an ignorant person from the world would never have a chance to join the Daking Immortal sect. As long as she hides the matter of Silent Ridge and doesn't mention it, as if she has never met, who will pay any attention to the nonsense of a local person? Instead of getting rid of it now, it's better to wait for that arrogant temperament to cause trouble in the realm. Yu Kanshu, www.yuyuganshu.com. She is taking the initiative to ask her life to get rid of it, which is a great achievement. Suan quickly forgot Ding Wen, and she was only full of the joy of bringing back Rainbow Heart Jade. This achievement was unexpected, and the master appreciated it, and ordered Suan to accompany the fairy craftsman to cast treasures in the realm. Suan should not have participated in such an important task at first. She is the only junior in her peers. Behind these exceptions, it is clear that the head is highly valued. Suan was full of joy when she suddenly heard an unusual sound coming from outside the Xian Shan protective formation. The Immortal Master, who was explaining to Suan about the formation of the treasures, muttered in surprise, "What a powerful sonic boom! After the formation of this faction is blocked, it can still be introduced. When will the realm under the control of this faction be like this? A regular Chaos Lord? It can't be him, can it?" Suan was secretly shocked. She hoped not, but she felt that it was difficult to find others at this moment. A big sword suddenly flew over, and a patrolling disciple stood on it. When he came, he said, "Suan, someone in the world shouted with a sonic boom stunt, "Suanv, you are in a hurry to go back to your life and tell me the time, I have already waited. You have been day and night." The patrolling disciples recounted it truthfully, with a seemingly serious demeanor, but Suanv gritted her teeth secretly, because she knew that this person was from the sect of the main messenger who plotted the Silent Mountain ambush operation. In front of the immortal master, this person repeated word for word, "It was intentional at all." The immortal master really frowned and asked Suanv, "It's not easy for you to bring back the Rainbow Heart Jade, but how did you get involved with the Chaos Lord of the realm? You are the Suanv of this sect, and the head of the sect treats you very highly. You have never been given an order, how can you communicate privately with the Chaos Lord who is in charge of the land?" The immortal master misunderstood. Xian Envy didn't expect that the mountain wild man would be able to sonic boom such stunts, so the original long-term plan was in vain. At this moment, Suanv was annoyed that the plan could not be fulfilled, and secretly hated Ding Wen's repeated surprises, but she had a respectful expression on her face, and calmly explained to the immortal master, "Actually, this person is not the Chaos Lord of the realm, but grew up in Silent Mountain. He helped a little when I returned to Rainbow Heart Jade, so I was soft-hearted and didn't stop him. I originally warned him not to leave Silent Hill, but I didn't expect him to be so ignorant. Silence Mountain is actually hiding such a murderous person from the realm." Xian Shi believed halfway, and his expression softened and said, "Suanv is out to do such a big event for the first time, and if things go well, it will inevitably be handled improperly. If such a murderous person from the realm obeys discipline, can also be entrusted with responsibility and make him do the responsibility of the Chaos Lord, but if he is arrogant and ignores the rules and etiquette, it will be a disaster if he stays. Suanv can't bear to take away his credit when she thinks of him. There should be no future troubles." Suanv hurriedly asked her order, "Thank you for the teachings of the immortal master, I will definitely keep it in my heart. Such mistakes will never be made again in the future. No need for others to do anything, I will remove the evil thing. That's the best way." The immortal master was very happy that Suanv did not live up to the master's high regard, and she could correct her mistakes when she knew them. It was really teachable. When Suanv flew out of the immortal sect with her sword in hand, someone shouted from behind. She saw the disciple under the immortal master. She knew that the immortal master was trying to confirm the authenticity of her words, and that she was afraid that she would let the murderous thing go away. "Take off." Suanv pretended to be relaxed and said, "I don't know what's good or bad about this murderous thing. I was soft-hearted for a while, but he took the responsibility for his murder. Later, I'll see how I beat him to smithereens. This arrogant and vicious creature dares to harass the sect with sonic booms, it." The disciples of the immortal sect flew out of the immortal sect and heard the sound of thunder rolling in the clear sky. The sound was so loud that they couldn't speak at all. They couldn't hear each other until the sound stopped, and they couldn't help but be angry at such arrogance. As for Ding Wen, he actually didn't know what sonic boom was. He just shouted to the sky as loudly as possible. He waited all day and night and still didn't see Suanv coming back, and no one came to send a word. He couldn't fly, so he could only shout when he was in a hurry. After shouting, he drank a breath of river water, rested for a while, and then turned his back to the immortal mountain in midair to shout again, but saw many small black dots flying down from the immortal mountain. Ding Wen guessed that it was Suanv, and happily jumped onto the highest nearby. With one punch, one kick, and several consecutive blows, all the trees on the top of the were broken and kicked away, and then she turned her face up and looked at the sky. A group of black dots in the after a while, the outline of the person can be seen with the dots. "Suanv, I'm here." Ding Wen waved repeatedly, afraid that Suanv wouldn't be able to find her. Suanv flew at the bottom and was even more annoyed when she heard it. A group of people who came from behind said angrily and hilariously, "This murderous thing really doesn't know how to live or die." Suanv was afraid that Ding Wen I would say something, so she pretended to hate and said, "This fierce creature has some skills." In case I am too slow to get rid of him alone, please help everyone. That's right. A group of immortal master's disciples originally came for this, and of course they didn't shirk, and they all wanted to settle the matter as soon as possible and go back sooner. Seeing that the figure on the ground became clearer, Suan snorted coldly, I originally gave you a chance to live a few more days, but you are in a hurry to find death. The sword in Suan's hand lit up with a dazzling red light, and the range of the red light rapidly expanded, covering her body completely. Then hover. When a group of immortal sect disciples saw Suan take such a powerful shot, they could all feel how angry she was with the murderous creatures on the ground. Ding Wen stood on the and saw Suan fall down and was enveloped by a strong red light. The light was so intense that he couldn't look directly, so he could not help but squinted his eyes and raised his hand to cover it, shouting in his mouth, Suanv, what is this? This is the clear sky, 10,000 rays of light. As Suanu gritted her teeth, the red light suddenly bloomed, turning into beams of light, rushing towards thee as fast as lightning. Countless red lights shot at Ding Wen incessantly, and every ray of light was burning like flames behind him. Hot Ding Wen's head was full of burning pain, and he couldn't help shouting, Xian Nu, what are you doing? There is a limit to the nonsense. I'll be angry if I don't stop. Ding Wen galloped away, jumped with all his strength in a hurry, and unexpectedly crossed 100 zhang distance in the void. However, he walked fast, and the hot red light that was chasing incessantly in the sky flew even faster. It was densely packed, and the number was extremely large, covering a circle during the siege, leaving no room for escape at all. No matter how hard Ding Wen tried to leap and gallop, he could only make the blow he suffered a little less, but he could not avoid it. Seeing that Ding Wen's Hong was recruited, Suanvan Midair could still run, but she still had the energy to shout after being beaten. Fearing what he said, she hurriedly shouted, My fellow students, please help. A large group of Daking sect disciples were originally surprised that Ding Wen was so resistant to the attack. Seeing how many trees and grasses were burned in the pursuit of clear sky and 10,000 rays of light, I am afraid that the ominous thing ran farther and farther and harmed the casting place under the jurisdiction of the immortal sect for no reason. He had the heart to help, and upon hearing Suan's words, they all gathered their strength to make moves, and together they cast 1,000 rays of light in the clear sky. Dozens of people made moves together, and it suddenly evolved into a formation. The dense beams of light in the sky converged into a wave of red light. Ding Wen, who was surging and impacted, fell to the ground, and could no longer run, so he could only be alone in the vortex of red light that continued to swirl. Hot! It's hot! It's hot! It's hot! It's hot! Ding Wen's mind is full of pain and burning hot. He already knew that Suan was going to kill him. Although he didn't know the truth, he understood one thing: Suan didn't believe her words, and she was unrepentant. Treachery, ruthless. It was a mistake to save you, and today I will make it up with my own hands. Ding Wen was at a loss for words, all he had in mind was this angry thought. He couldn't run around in the siege formation that everyone joined together, but he didn't want to go anymore. The aggressiveness of anger pushes the star energy in Ding Wen to keep accumulating energy while resisting the continuous burning of the flames. The waves gathered by the red light surged in the earth, engulfing the mountains, forests, and grasslands, turning the green earth into charred black. Ding Wen only felt that his body was sinking, sinking. But soon after, the ground on which he was stepping became firmer. Ding Wen kept his face up, looking at the midair, remembering the position where Suan was suspended. Even though there was only a hot red light in his eyes now, he kept looking in that direction, always remembering the position where Suan was suspended. At this moment, the solid feeling under his feet caused his accumulated strength and burning anger to explode together. Ding Wen secretly used the star energy he had accumulated to activate the stunt that he had really practiced since childhood: the thorn under the moon. The fire continued to burn on him, and in the red wave of light surging on the ground, a burning fireman suddenly rushed out of the ground. That leap seemed to be able to rush into the clear sky for thousands of miles. Suanv, who was suspended in midair, suddenly saw Ding Wen's burning head and face appear in front of her. Before she could be shocked, Ding Wen's fist had already hit her in the face. The power of this punch, as if pushed by a mountain, was far more heavy than Xian Nu imagined. Suan's body protecting immortal aura was instantly smashed, and the immortal body and immortal bones were all smashed in an instant. The power of this punch made Suan unable to rest her eyes until she died. The power of this punch made a group of Xianmen disciples who had the mentality of easily solving the harassing things startled and angry. The flame was still burning on Ding Wen, and the Suanvan midair lost her head out of thin air. At this moment, time seems to freeze. Damn monster! An angry roar suddenly exploded, also awakening a group of Xianmen disciples. So the clear sky and 10,000 rays of light combined more intensively, and the immortal disciples who made the move also flew higher. Ding Wenchen was in midair and couldn't fly. The momentum of his jump had come to an end. After the angry counterattack that had accumulated strength succeeded, he had no way to save himself. So he was in the void like that, letting the Daking sex stunts continuously bombarded by a large group of Xianmen disciples. The red light converged into a wave of light, scrolling and burning. Ding Wen, who was in it, couldn't fall or jump up, as if he had become an elixir in a cauldron, continuing to endure the burning of the flames. Ding Wen's consciousness is getting more and more blurred, more and more blurred. This time, I remembered that those people were evil, and so was the Suan who was hunted down by those people. She was just a vicious woman in a weak position at that time, and she was not worth saving. I don't know if I'm dead this time, can I live again? Ding Wen still wants to live. He hasn't seen the outside world yet. He hasn't seen the complicated world where pain and happiness coexist, as Master said. Ding Wen's consciousness was darkened. The red light in the sky finally converged. Because Ding Wen was burned to the ground, he didn't know where his ashes were scattered. A group of immortal sect disciples did not have the joy of victory. They took Suan's headless corpse and returned to Immortal Mountain with shame on their faces. A land full of black soil. The grey and black of the flames burning all over the sky fluttered in the wind. The surrounding trees that were not burned by fire were also covered with a heavy grey. The silkworm on a green leaf was stunned, then shook his head, hating the sudden deterioration of the air quality. The silkworm shook his head. It was pitch black, suddenly pierced by light. However, there was only light in his eyes, which was blurry, making Ding Wen unable to see things clearly. He felt that his body was moving, but it felt very strange, like a snake. No, it was more like a worm squirming. He couldn't feel the existence of his legs, and his whole body felt strange. Am I alive again? Are your eyes hurt? Ding Wen didn't know why, although he didn't know what it was like to die. Read www.yuuganshu.com, but he can still feel himself. Should he be alive? Ding Wen tried his best to see the surroundings clearly, but he still saw only light, twisting his body and head, and only the light and dark changes. He couldn't see things at all. Ding Wen kept moving, hoping to feel that his body was normal, at least not to feel that his movements were like a wriggling bug. On the grey mulberry leaf, the silkworm that twisted so hard suddenly fell. After falling to the ground, the silkworm was still trying to shake its head and twist its body, as if to see the world clearly. However, it cannot see clearly. It can't even see a sparrow fly by. The sparrow unceremoniously swallowed the silkworm into its stomach, and the feeling of satiety from the food made the sparrow stand comfortably on the branch. Ding Wen felt as if his body had been pierced, and then stuffed into something. Then, he realized the taste of death, the rapid passing of life and the continuous burning of the clear sky. After a while, Ding Wen's consciousness darkened again. The sparrow was startled suddenly, and then his eyes clearly changed. Ding Wen's past consciousness suddenly brightened again. This time, it's not just light, he can see things clearly. It's just. Ding Wen saw that everything in front of him was red. The trees, the grass, the branches, and himself were all covered in red. myself. Pa? Ding Wen lowered his head in amazement, and saw that the paw was indeed raised under the control of his consciousness, then lowered, raised, lowered again. After repeating this so many times, it has become certain that it is his feet, a pair of bird feet. He also has wings. Judging from his appearance, he has indeed become a sparrow. Ding Wen was still standing on the branch in a daze, because he didn't want to be a sparrow at all. He was hungry and saw worms on the leaves. However, he didn't want to eat worms. His body is a sparrow, but this sparrow's body is still his consciousness. He has never eaten a worm since he was a child. I don't want to eat insects either. If you starve to death, you won't eat. Ding Wen made up his mind, he didn't want to be a bird, he really starved to death, maybe he would turn into something else? Ding Wen used willpower to fight against the sparrow's body's hunger and eating instinct. He would never eat insects. As if his will moved something. Suddenly, Ding Wen felt wrapped up. Then, the body was squeezed tightly, and the pain of breathlessness and broken bones continued to stimulate him. I was attacked by a snake. Ding Wen remembered that at the end of the line of sight, it closed like a snake's mouth, because the characteristics of the snake's teeth are easy to identify. All right, anyway, I don't want to be a sparrow, and I don't want to eat worms. Starvation or torture, it is better to have a good time. Ding Wen quickly realized that being a sparrow being swallowed by a snake is definitely not a pleasure. Before he died completely, his body had no idea how many bones were broken by the snake. Death is painful, and so is the death of a sparrow. When Ding Wen's consciousness darkened, he wasn't sure whether he would be able to live again. If so, would he become? Ding Wen's dark consciousness, when he saw the scene again, the things he saw were different. The green grass turned purple, and the yellow earth was particularly bright. Forget it, the animal he saw turned out to be red. A rabbit is in the grass is quite deep, and it is very concealed as usual. But, in Ding Wen's eyes, the redness of the rabbit's body could be seen too clearly through the gaps in the grass. The world in the snake's eyes turned out to be like this. This is really interesting, seeing live things are all red. Ding Wen climbed up the branches, probed out of the treetops, looked at the sky, and surveyed the surrounding scene. The world in the eyes of snakes is different from that in the eyes of sparrows, and it is also different from that in the eyes of people. In the past, Ding Wen never thought about this kind of problem, but now he suddenly realized that the shape, appearance, and color of things are one kind of state in the eyes of people, one kind in the eyes of birds, and another kind in the eyes of snakes. Then, with so many living creatures under the sky, how many states are there in their eyes? Which is the true state of things? Ding Wen thought it was very interesting to think about these questions. However, he obviously didn't know how to be a snake. Eagle told him happily. The eagle flew by quickly, and its hook-like claws pierced the snake's body mercilessly. No matter how hard the snake's body twisted, it tried to fight back, but it couldn't reach it. I used to hold a snake for 7 inches, and the snake is such a feeling of despair and helplessness. Ding Wen knew that it was useless to struggle. He had caught a snake before, and if he grasped the right position, the snake just couldn't bite. Obviously, the eagles he has more experience in catching snakes than him, and he is very accurate in catching them. Moreover, the eagle gave him a good cheer very simply. Then, the eagle was startled. Ding Wen's consciousness lit up again. He had already adapted and knew that he had become an eagle. He was going to use the eagle's eyes to take a good look at the world. It would be a good experience to fly around for a while. As soon as Ding Wen opened his eyes, he saw an arrow. The attack was extremely fast, and before Ding Wen, who had just opened his eyes, had time to react, he was already shot. A sturdy young man galloped over happily, with only the joy of hunting and harvesting in his eyes. He was accustomed to the eagle's quickly dim eyes when his life died away. Just as the young man was about to grab his prey, he was startled suddenly. Ding Wen's consciousness lit up again, and the scene in his eyes finally became familiar. This is the world in human vision. Ding Wen looked at his body for a moment, tried it, and found that the star energy in this body is very weak, and the strength of the body is far from his original body, let alone compared with the previous chaos body. Ding Wen tried to move around and twisted his waist with a fist. After a while, he sighed and said, "It's too weak, the strength is poor, and the movement is slow. Is that what a body without training is like? Such a weak star can't use any special skills at all." Ding Wen's past cultivation experience told him that no matter how fast he comprehends it, it will take some time for an ordinary body to cultivate the star energy map, but the effect of the determination of the mind learned by the young man in training the body is stronger than that of mine. It may not take a year to practice the star map, at least he can make the Hong Yuan Ju. Ding Wen picked up the eagle and returned to his new home with a bow and arrow. A log cabin. This hunter was alone. His parents died of plague in the early years. He usually made a living by hunting, and he hung a lot of dried prey at home. Few people spend money to buy them, most of them are exchanged for other grains and vegetables. Because the Orion was oppressed by the village bully, he lived far away from the village, at the foot of the mountain not far from the east of Silent Mountain. The fire outside the Silent Mountain did not burn here. The hunters knew that there must be beasts that escaped from the fire. Most of them would be scorched, but there would also be ready-made cheap burns that escaped the fire area. Unexpectedly, they encountered an eagle. So the hunter disappeared. Then, Ding Wen changed from an eagle to a human again. Ding Wen didn't want to be an Orion here, but he was too weak. He felt that at least he had to learn a star map before he could go out. The outside world has not yet been seen, but it has already given Ding Wen the impression of being very complicated and dangerous. When I develop a star map and go to the village to get justice for you, that's all I can do. Ding Wen was still a little guilty and was willing to do something for this hunter. The food in the house is ready-made, and Ding Wen only does exercises every day. The determination of the young man in Silent Mountain is beyond his imagination. The speed of accumulation of star energy is not comparable to the determination he cultivated since childhood. Ding Wen has been practicing swords since he was a child. Orion does not have a sword here, so he uses a wooden sword. For him, the changes in moves and application have long been engraved into his soul, and what needs to be exercised is Orion's body. He used to be able to perform many movements at will, but Orion's body could not support such a large change in strength, nor did he have such a swift action response. Ding Wen has been practicing Hong Yuan Ju since he was a child. The real stunt is 2 moves, but it is very difficult to practice, because the basis of the moves depends on the seemingly ordinary basic movements. The stronger his own strength, the more powerful the moves. Powerful. With Orion's foundation, Ding Wen dared not expect to be able to practice all the moves of Hong Yuan Ju in a short period of time, but only if he could practice the star map to be able to perform 3 moves. No one came from the village, and the hunter only went to the village to change things, but Ding Wen practiced the exercises quietly. "It's just that I practice hard every day, and the more I practice Ding Wen, the more depressed I feel." He has been training hard for more than 10 years, and finally Xiao Chang went down the mountain. Now he is going to do it all over again? It would be nice if it was killed by someone more powerful. Ding Wen denied the idea as soon as it came to the fore. This is body robbing, it's impossible to imagine if you have to do it, if you don't do it deliberately, you'll become a vicious villain like Suanv. Ding Wen thought of Suanv and the group of people who were chasing Suanv and hated it. Even without his master's teaching, he never wanted to become that kind of person. So, continue to grit your teeth and practice hard. 3 months have passed in such a flash. This day Ding Wen felt that the stars in his body were filled with colorful light, and the inner vision was as wonderful as a star map. The star map is the basic realm of practitioners, that is, the ability to store and use star energy. Enter this gate, and then talk about the use of stunts. After practicing the star map, the food that the hunter had stored was almost consumed. Ding Wen didn't stop there, he packed up and set off for the village. First get justice for you. Ding Wen has always remembered the injustice that this hunter encountered, and he didn't feel unfamiliar when he entered the village. The hunter's familiarity with the village became Ding Wen's familiarity, but this familiarity seemed to be separated by a layer of veil, but it was different. Ding Wen's original memory is so kind. Therefore, Ding Wen seems to be only a third party's evaluation criteria for the people who resent in Orion's memory, and there is no such deep hatred. There was no busy figure in a field. Ding Wen went straight into the field, picked ripe spinach at random and threw it into the back basket. After picking for a while, a figure finally came running over. Ding Wen was waiting for someone to find out, because this field belonged to hunters, but was occupied by the villagers by various means to force him away. Of course Ding Wen is not ready to take root here, but he is not ready to take advantage of the mastermind who oppressed Orion. A woman came, and Ding Wen greeted him while picking spinach. "Yo, second sister-in-law." The woman's complexion was black and yellow, and her eyes became a little complicated when she saw that it was a hunter. At this time, she looked at him and sighed, "There is something going on in the village, and everyone is in the field. If you are short of food, hurry up and pick more. Hurry back and don't let them meet." As the woman said, Malu bent down to help pick it up, and looked towards the village. This vegetable field belongs to her family now. Orion doesn't remember much interaction with his second sister-in-law. Ding Wen didn't expect this situation. Yu reading www.yuuganshu.com. What I picked is your vegetable field, second sister-in-law. You don't call someone to chase me, and you still help. Ding Wen is not afraid that people will kill him. How can he find trouble as planned under the current situation? The woman bent over to pick vegetables, and looked at the village, lest anyone see it, and said, "The land is yours, and I know that the family is wrong, but you know the boss's temper. My family's I didn't want your land at all, but he dared to say no when his brother said something? I'm a woman, and I can't say anything. If you really need food in the future, I'll send it to you outside the village." See, how can the boss give up? He has long said that it is a disaster for you to keep it, and my family said that you dare not make trouble, and also expect you to get some wild things to change your appetite. The boss didn't bother you, you said didn't you hit the knife yourself? The woman was chattering, and Ding Wen was depressed for a while. In this case, his plans had to be adjusted. The woman helped pick a lot, and then hurriedly urged him to say, "Go back quickly. The village has been busy recently, and the people from the immortal sect are casting swords here. I have to hurry back to the kitchen. Second sister-in-law, go get busy, don't worry about me." Naturally, the woman did not expect that Ding Wen was here to look for trouble, so she went back to work in a hurry. Ding Wen went straight to the village square with a basket full of spinach on his back. Suand once said that the 10,000 miles east of Silent Mountain is the place of the Daking immortal sect. When Ding Wen went to the square, the people in the village thought he was taking the prey in exchange for the food, but when he didn't see the prey, but saw the food on his back, they thought he had already exchanged it with the kitchen, so no one paid him any attention, and he was busy. The one who moved the table, the one who moved the chair, the one who spread the washed cloth on the square, the one who set the bowls and chopsticks to pour the wine, the one who served the dishes and soup. People in a village were busy entertaining, and there were only 8 immortals from the Daking faction. The 8 immortals were like Suand after leaving Silent Hill, their skin was faintly white, and their clothes were also shining with golden light. The tables and chairs of the immortals seem to have been newly built. Clean cloths are laid under the table and on the way to the dining table. Behind each immortal are 2 boys and girls from the village kneeling. The dish that came went through several hands, and finally the handsome boy at the table took it and put it on the table. Around the immortals' dining table, there were no other tables and chairs, but many were folded up and stacked on the side, and many villagers who had been busy and had nothing to do stood quietly with their heads bowed. Ding Wen had never seen the immortal's pomp, and only heard Suan say a few words. He was very surprised when he saw it. The village tyrant in Orion's memory, that is, Orion's cousin, was kneeling at the table of the immortal and saw Orion. The second sister-in-law brought the buns and waved her hands reproachfully to urge her to hurry up. After changing hands several times, the basket of steamed buns was brought to the table by the handsome young man at the table. An immortal grabbed a bun, but his movements suddenly stopped, and his eyes were fixed on a bit of dust on the bun. This unusual move made the whole village instantly suffocate like a dead silence, followed by countless pairs of faces full of fear. There is dust on the steamed buns. Is this dissatisfaction with the Daking faction? Or is it disrespectful to me? The immortal holding the steamed buns said in a sullen tone. Immortals, spare your life! Immortals, spare your life! I went to pick spinach in the vegetable field, and the ones who came back and washed their hands, those who have washed their hands, I was busy delivering the steamed buns and may not have washed them. The target of Ding Wen's visit this time, that is, the village tyrant kneeling at the table, suddenly scolded, if you do something carelessly, don't hurry up to admit your mistake and get punished. How dare you explain the excuse? Ding Wen thought to himself that this was a big deal. The villagers were so nervous that they would eat a bit of dust. If they didn't take off that bit, they would have to change to another one. They were all scared to death. Yes, it's my fault, please immortals to punish. Orion's second sister-in-law trembled, as if she had expected the outcome. The immortal flicked his chopsticks, and the buns he was holding onto the ground were thrown on the ground. The girl kneeling behind her hurriedly set up new clean chopsticks on the ground. The immortal held it in his hand, and said in a tolerant and leisurely tone, since you were careless, I think that you have worked hard today, so you shouldn't pursue it too much. You can cut yourself off. Thank you, thank you. Xiezianren is kind. Orion's second sister-in-law shivered, but there was trembling and fear in her voice. A child in the crowd cried and ran out, but was dragged by her father. The child cried, Mother! Mother! Orion's second sister-in-law turned her head in fright and winked anxiously, but she didn't dare to make a sound. Her sad looking husband covered the child's mouth. Noisy! No more noise, and they will all be executed. An immortal frowned and looked unhappy. Orion's second sister-in-law saw that the child was under the control of her husband. Fearing that the delay would affect her husband and children, she headed towards the big tree and rushed over. A table of immortals didn't even look at them, and they took care of their dishes as if nothing had happened. Many people in the village turned their faces to the side, unable to bear to see it. The child opened his eyes wide, struggling with anxiety and fear, but he couldn't get rid of his father's control, and he didn't see his father's sad and desperate expression behind him. The next moment, a picture of a woman crashing into a tree and dying had already appeared in the minds of the villagers. Orion's second sister-in-law slammed her head into the tree. However, the touch doesn't feel right. Orion's second sister-in-law raised her head in surprise, and saw Ding Wen standing in front of her, who just bumped into his blocking palm. You! Orion's second sister-in-law couldn't understand the abnormal situation. She was afraid of arguing with the immortals when she said a word, so she quickly shut up, as long as she tried to get around Gao Ding Wen's block and hit the tree again, but was caught by Ding Wen. Dragged her all the way in the direction of her husband until it pushed her into her husband's arms. Everyone in the village was stunned. They didn't know what the madness was going on. After being stunned for a while, the village tyrant quickly shouted, "Who put this lunatic into the village? Drive him out and beat him to death." The village tyrant shouted, and hurriedly turned his head and knelt down at the gate of the immortals to explain, "The immortal is not angry at all. This lunatic is not from our village at all. He lives far away and often runs around. If he was killed today, he will never be. Let him have another chance to disturb the immortal. Then let's do it." The immortals on the table were obviously not interested in further research, they were only tired of the situation where they could not eat quietly. The villagers came back to their senses, and quickly picked up stools, sticks and stones. Unexpectedly, Ding Wen laughed angrily and shouted, "You got it! There are so many people who want to kill a few immortals like beasts, but they are aggressive towards me. I don't have the courage to resist these immortals, just watch, come on, don't make trouble for me if you can't help me." Ding Wen walked directly to the table of the immortals, his eyes showing the deep hatred for the immortals of the Daking immortal sect. He didn't know much about the strength of immortals, but the stunts of the immortals led by Suand were very powerful, and all of them could fly. Ding Wen knew that the entry-level cultivation of the star map was not worth mentioning, and he really shouldn't be strong, but he couldn't stand it when he saw such a situation. It's really a mad dog. An immortal raised his head, frowned, looked at Ding Wen with disgust, and shouted, "If you don't drive the mad dog away, what are you waiting for?" Ding Wen did not wait for the villagers to be forced to attack him, and suddenly accelerated forward. An immortal on the table was full of disapproval and threw out his chopsticks. "I don't know the heights of things." The immortal knew that the strength on the chopsticks was enough to pierce the ordinary strong man a dozen times in a row, and there was absolutely no reason for him to live. A pair of chopsticks was attached with golden star power, turned into a flash of light, and flew past like lightning. However, it failed. Ding Wen's forward rush speeded up strangely, like a flash of light, and the pair of chopsticks lost their alignment and only passed through the air behind him. Ding Wen's sudden stunt obviously surprised a table of immortals. The brand new dining table was torn apart, and the dishes and soup on the table splashed randomly and landed on the bodies and faces of several immortals. "They can't drive me away, they have to. You can do it yourself." Ding Wen kicked the table on purpose. Looking at the embarrassed and irritated appearance of the 8 immortals, he was especially happy. He knew that he had to kill the wolves first, so he deliberately provoked the 8 immortals to do it himself, so he didn't have to use force against many innocent people in the village. This move apparently worked. So the male immortal who threw off the chopsticks abruptly waved his forearm in annoyance, and the sword on his waist instantly lit up with golden light and flew out of the scabbard. This trick was used to deal with the masters of the realm. At this time, in a rage, the immortal only wanted Ding Wen to die quickly, but he didn't care about killing chickens with bull knives. Ding Wen responded very quickly. At the same time that the male immortal moved, the condensed star energy in his body suddenly activated, and Hong Yuanju's second move, Zhuiying Continuous Slash, was activated. I saw red light blooming under his feet, and his speed it changed quickly again, turning into a flashing red shadow, just right to flash under the raised arm of the male immortal, and the hatchet in his hand mercilessly chopped the male immortal's body. One hit. At the moment when the knife was hit, the male immortal was only stunned. After being stunned, he was furious. Then, the male immortal completely lost his usual palm technique, and suddenly retreated. Just like that, he used his back and head to slam into Ding Wen, who was slashing another immortal with his knife. With the force of the collision, Ding Wenzen vomited blood and threw it out. The other male immortal who was hit with a knife was also stunned. Then, he touched his neck with lingering fears, his arms were shaking involuntarily. Just now, he almost died. The male fairy who knocked Ding Wen into the air strode forward in anger, regardless of walking out of the paved road or stepping on the dirt. The male fairy is afraid, and there is also shame and anger. His dignified Daking immortal sex immortal artifact master actually followed the path of a lowly nameless person in the world. The mere star map cultivation base dares to delusionally kill this immortal. Say, where did you learn the evil method? Is it someone from the Destroying Immortal Society? The edge swayed with fear. The evil methods of this unknown person in the world are strange, but fortunately, the cultivation base of Xing Neng is not worth mentioning, so even his fairy body protection Xing Neng can't be broken, otherwise, he would have been cut into 2 parts just now. The star map in Ding Wen's body was smashed by the heavy shock. At this moment, he has no power to fight back. He has never fought against immortals. Orion's foundation is too bad, the immortal is really standing there motionless, and the cultivation base of Orion can't hurt the immortal in the slightest. Tell me. Is it a member of the Immortal Destruction Society? The male immortal asked again angrily, but Ding Wen smiled and said, My name is Ding Wen, a native of Hongyuan Mountain. It's evil spirits like you, I think it's good. Bastard! The male immortal pierced Ding Wen's throat with a sword, pulled it out, threw away the blood, put the sword into the sheath, flicked his long sleeves, swung his hands behind his back, calmed down his emotions, and then said, I think they are just spies of the destroyer of immortals. If you give them 10 courage, they don't dare to be presumptuous under our Daking faction's immortal mountain. There is no need to waste time with him. When did Mi Xian create such a strange evil method? The other immortals were all concerned about Ding Wen's stunt, and they slashed the two of them in an instant. This kind of strange evil method, if it is close to the cultivation level using it, just thinking about it makes me shudder. The male immortal who killed Ding Wen suddenly lowered his head and face, was so stunned, and suddenly said, The experience of death is very bad, I don't like it very much. But I would rather experience death than endure the actions of evil immortals like you. UU reading www.yukansha.com Li Xian, you, what are you doing? The 7 immortals were startled and inexplicable, and they all realized that strange things had happened to people they were familiar with. When an immortal saw Li Xian's eyes as if he had changed his mind, he seemed to be as rebellious as the evil beast he just killed. He couldn't help but question with suspicion, Li Xian, have you fallen into the fascination? No matter how evil you are, you can't be evil. Maybe my bizarre ability is just to get rid of you evil spirits. Ding Wen held the sword of the Daking Xian faction and launched the abyss battle that he had been training hard since childhood. Seeing the golden light blooming, Ding Wen suddenly disappeared from thin air, and appeared behind the 7 immortals in a flash. The immortal who was closest to him lowered his head in surprise, raised his head to touch his neck, and saw blood all over his hands, and a steady stream of star energy pouring out of his neck. He was hit by the sword. This body has a star power cultivation base of the level of a large star map, which is very decent. Ding Wen dodged behind the enemy, using the same moon-piercing immortal stance, which was just as fast as a shadow, but now disappears in an instant. As for the next second move, ultimate shadow slash, of course it's not the same. Ding Wen's figure turned into a red light, flashing around the 7 immortals, and the red sword light suddenly flew in front of and behind the 7 immortals. Everything happened too fast. The 7 immortals had never seen this kind of stunt, and they didn't expect the familiar Li Xian to perform such a murderous and bizarre stunt that did not belong to the Daking immortal faction. Before the 7 immortals even had time to fly, they were all cut off by the red sword light. The red shadow flickered, and Ding Wen stood where he was a moment ago, but his body was in a swooping posture, with the red light hazy sword in his hand, pointing diagonally to the side. His sharp eyes quickly moved over the position of the sword among the 7 immortals. A fairy just turned into a corpse and scattered. The immortals are dead, but the star energy accumulated in their immortal bodies continues to overflow, turning into golden and red rays of light. Ding Wen's mood subsided quickly. He was very satisfied. Hong Yuanzhu's cultivation from the big star map level was powerful, stronger than his original middle star map realm. Li Xian's immortal body looks a little flimsy, but it is unexpectedly agile and powerful. Hong Yuan's determination is definitely not weaker than before him. Everyone in the village was unusually silent. It was inconceivable that the hunter they knew suddenly jumped out and confronted the immortal, but then an immortal killed the hunter and killed 7 other immortals, and they were even more inexplicable. The villagers were stunned, but Ding Wen still remembered what happened to Orion, so he walked over to the village tyrant, kicked the village tyrant's arm, and scolded, "Zhong, Orion's arm was interrupted by you, you thought it was very secret? He actually knew, but he couldn't fight you, and he was afraid that he would be killed by you sooner or later if he stayed in the village, so he was forced to leave the village." The village bully screamed in pain, but he didn't dare to scream. He didn't know why this immortal Li killed his fellow clan, and he didn't know why the immortal stood for Zhong Orion, but he didn't dare to ask, let alone argue, even he was afraid that the screams would be too loud and the immortal would kill him. You relying on your skills to be domineering. Today I will abolish your star map cultivation base. In the future, you will no longer have the ability to bully the weak. Whether the people in the village are willing to endure your bullying is up to them. As for me, I'm not a Li Xian from the Daking Xian faction, I'm Ding Wen from Hong Yuan Mountain. When the people from the Daking Xian faction come, just tell them Rainbow Heart Jade is not theirs at all, I took it. Ding Wen has the memory of Li Xian, and he also knows about Rainbow Heart Jade. The master of the Silence Ridge Youth is not an immortal from Hidden Love Peak, but a Chaos Lord under the Daking Immortal Sect, who takes orders from Suan Peak in the Daking Immortal Sect. The master of the boy in Silent Mountain suffered special injuries due to the war, and only Linglong Xin can treat it. The necessary thing for Linglong Xin to refine is the rare treasure Rainbow Heart Jade. The master of the young man in Silent Mountain finally got a piece, and he was taken to Silent Mountain because he was robbed. He waited for the Rainbow Heart Jade to mature before contacting Suan Peak. Only Suan Feng knew about this matter. Suan Feng promised to help make it into an exquisite heart. In fact, he made a plot when they met. The Chaos Lord didn't know what to do, and died after a few days. Rainbow Heart Jade became a gift from Suan Peak to the sect master. The Suan who brought Rainbow Heart Jade back that day was actually the leader of the new generation of Suan Peak, so she got this opportunity to make a contribution. And these 8 immortals are here to refine the immortal artifact Linglong Xin, based on the Rainbow Heart Jade. Ding Wen left the villagers and the village tyrant who had abolished his cultivation and went to the refining room. In fact, Linglong Xin was refined half a month ago, but there is a long tradition for fairy artifact masters to do this kind of thing. There can be more when credit is recorded. For the immortals, staying in the world itself is a matter of suffering, and the immortals turn a blind eye to this, so it has become a long-standing tradition. The array that guides star energy in the refining room seems to others to be chaotic interlacing of various colors of light with unknown meaning. Ding Wen has never learned the skill of refining before, but with the memory of Li Xian, of course he knows it. The hollows on the dark golden refining furnace are filled with star energy gathered and guided by the refining array. The alchemy furnace must be placed on the star energy gathering point. This is why the Daking Immortal Sect refines immortals in such a village. The reason for the device. An exquisite heart saves countless medicinal pills. Ding Wen only knew the real magic of Linglong Xin through Li Xian's memory. The world generally regards the Linglong heart as a treasure that can keep the star map repaired and never collapse, but the immortal masters or knowledgeable immortals in the 5 immortal sects know that the Linglong heart is still an important treasure for the qualitative change of the star map. After the star energy fills the star cave, it takes a long time of deliberate practice to cause the star cave quality to change into a star position, but having an exquisite heart can not only stabilize the star map in the body, but also allow a star cave to undergo a qualitative change directly and become a star position. Ordinary people have 830 star acupoints in their bodies, and if they are all filled with cultivation, it is a long process of cultivating the 830 star acupoints one by one into star positions. The human king's body has 72 star acupoints, and the celestial body has only 36 star acupuncture points. The difficulty of cultivating these 2 physiques into star positions has been greatly reduced, so we know the preciousness of the exquisite heart. Lixian's memory said that this exquisite heart can stabilize the star map, even if it is reincarnated in 100 times. If there is such a miraculous effect, then if I die again, can the cultivation of the big star map be transferred with the spiritual consciousness? Ding Wen pressed the radiant Linglong heart on his forehead with anticipation, and according to the method known by Li Xian, catalyzed the fusion of Linglong heart with the star map in the body. Ding Wen was engrossed in it, the delicate heart between his fingertips and his forehead bloomed, and the bright light actually shot out of the hole, turning into a colorful light band that spread into the sky and became wider and wider. Ding Wen focused on refining. The light that Linglong Xin actually used was so exaggerated that Li Xian had never seen it in his memory, and of course he would not know. The star map in Ding Wen's body has been integrated into the exquisite heart, and the paths between the star holes that were originally vague are connected by clear-colored light, and the 7 Taituo star holes of the fairy body are connected like this, and they become stable. Ding Wen knew that there were only 7 Taituo star acupoints in the immortal body. Ding Wen searched and compared the memories of the immortals one by one, and quickly understood that 1 star acupointment in the immortal body was like many human star acupoints combined. The main star caves used by Hong Yuanju include the Tiansu Xing Xing Cave and Tiancha Xing Xing Cave in the fairy body. Linglong Xin can turn a star cave into an action. Tiansu Xing uses more, it's just it. Ding Wen's thoughts guided Linglong's and settled in Tiansu Xing Xing Cave. I saw that the golden light flowing from Tiansu Xingxing's cave was brighter, and its volume suddenly increased several times, and then it slowly and continuously rotated, and the stars flowing through it had more energy and faster speed. No wonder Master once said that every breakthrough in the cultivation after the big star map is exciting, especially the qualitative change in the acupoints at the beginning. I can't wait to see what changes have been made to the thorns under the moon. Ding Wen ended his concentration state, got up and went out of the cave. Just as he was trying to find out, he found that many immortals were flying down from the sky. Naturally, he didn't know that the extraordinary light of Linglong's heart just shocked the Daking immortal sect, and he was surprised that the Daking immortal sect knew so quickly. Judging from what Li Xian remembers, the immortals of the Daking Xian faction are clearly good and bad, so I can't just remove them all indiscriminately. Moreover, thousands of chaotic monsters appear every year in the Wanli land under the jurisdiction of the Daking immortal sect. If it was not long ago, Ding Wen was sure that his ability to transfer spiritual consciousness was stable and reliable, and he was afraid that there would be a righteous indignation that wiped out all the evil immortals of the Daking immortal sect. I don't think so anymore. First, there is no reason to do that, and second, the immortal mountains in the sky are not so fragile. He looked at the many immortals who came down from the sky, and he couldn't tell whether they were good or bad, so he didn't plan to fight them, but left the village directly. However, the immortals of the Daking immortal sect didn't know that Ding Wen didn't want to kill for nothing, so it was impossible to let him go from the beginning. A large group of immortals rushed to chase in midair, beating and berating, clearly not giving up. Among the immortals, the peak master of Xianxi Peak is the most annoyed. Li Xian is because he did not perform well in cultivation in the immortal sect, and he was born in Xianshan, so he had the opportunity to learn refining skills in a new way. Such an immortal, how could he betray the Daking Xian faction for Linglong Xin? Unless Li Xian is crazy. The Xianxi Peak Master wanted to find out the reason no matter what, so he shouted and reprimanded all the way, but unfortunately the response he received made him feel more and more incomprehensible. Don't chase, I'm not Li Xian, I'm Ding Wen from Hong Yuan Mountain. Rainbow Heart Jade doesn't belong to the Daking Xian faction at all, it's what Sun Feng fabricated lies to seize the people of Silent Mountain. I'll take it, though it's impossible to say that things should be returned to their original owners, but it's no less reasonable than your Daking Xian faction. Those evil immortals in the village were eliminated by me, and now I am leaving because I can't distinguish between you which are the evil immortals that should be eliminated and which are the evil immortals. The immortals who are not guilty of death, and which are the good immortals who should not be killed. I advise you not to continue chasing. Once you make a move, you will be unable to control the death and injury. Ding Wen himself knew that these words were useless, but he felt it must be said whether it is useful or not. Maybe some immortal has doubts in his heart and does not kill him? Lixian, stop quickly. You know that you can't escape. Just tell me what happened, and I will carefully distinguish and convict you. Crazy talk, why did you do such a futile escape? After chasing like this for a while, a flying bird made of light rushed up from the void and fell into the hands of an immortal. The immortal absorbed the light bird into the body, got the information inside, and immediately said angrily, Xianxi Peak Master. The villagers have proved that Li Xian killed 7 immortal masters, and the evidence is conclusive. According to the description of the villagers, the methods used by Li Xian are different. The master of Xianxi Peak was shocked and unbelievable. Li Xian's ability was only in the middle of the immortal masters of artifact refining. How could he kill the other 7? But since this is the case, Li Xian's guilt is inevitable, and there is bound to be little room for excuse. Even if he doesn't want to, Xian Shifeng is destined to take responsibility this time. He took out the seal of the Peak Master, held it high above the top, and said in his mouth, "I take the responsibility of the Peak Master of the Immortal Master Peak to open the technique of breaking the seal and punish the immortals who are in the same class as the wreckage. All the immortals present can prove it." The surrounding immortals shouted, "We can all prove that the Peak Master's opening of the seal breaking technique is in line with the laws of the Daking School. If there is any guilt, I am willing to bear it together." The Master of Xianxi Peak followed the rules, and only then did he activate the command of the Master to launch the technique of breaking the seal. I saw the Peak Master's order in his hand holding the miniature refining furnace shoot out a golden light, and the lights and shadows of the identity cards engraved with names were slowly rotating. The technique of breaking the seal, stabbed with one finger. The light card suddenly shattered, and at the same time, Ding Wen, who was flying rapidly, suddenly felt that he could not control the movement of the stars in the immortal body, and the flying immortal technique could not be maintained. "Oops, will you fall to your death?" The fear of the rapid fall made Ding Wen close his eyes, and suddenly his body fell to the ground. The huge impact force shook his internal organs to pieces all at once. His mind was also in chaos, and he lost all consciousness for a while. But after a while, the indescribable and unusual pain continued to stimulate him. The discomfort was stronger than when the sparrow was swallowed by the snake. "It's so uncomfortable. I really don't want to die anymore." Ding Wen's mind was flooded with this thought, and the next moment, his consciousness went black. The consciousness at the time of death was dark, and Ding Wen was already familiar with it. But in fact, he didn't know anything about what happened after the dark. But this time, after the darkness of consciousness passed, Ding Wen saw the exquisite heart made of rainbow heart jade. The color of that little ball was particularly eye-catching in the dark. This group of light illuminated the rays of light that were connected to the glowing star caves, forming a star map. The star map as a whole glowed with a light blue light, but there was an extra bright group of colored light in the middle. Surrounding the blue light is a deep darkness. Ding Wen felt that he was in this star map, or in the middle of this star map. He seems to be riding in this luminous star map, floating forward in the darkness. Why is it all black around? Ding Wen was at a loss and wondered if his strange ability had failed. Is what he saw now a real death? Suddenly, a group of light appeared in front of him, and it was also a star map emitting blue light. Ding Wen found himself flying over quickly, and he was about to collide. In the star map that was close at hand, 9 groups of dim light suddenly scattered, as if to avoid the next collision. Ding Wen could only watch the 2 star maps collide hidden. In an instant, the blue light scattered, as if the star map shattered. Ding Wen's consciousness flickered, and then he found that his star map was safe and sound, and it seemed to be a smashed star map. The surrounding darkness was suddenly dispelled by light. Ding Wen opened his eyes, and he was in the air. His clothes and hair fluttered in the wind as he fell, and the star under his thick eyebrows reflected a corpse Li Xian. Just now because of the exquisite heart. Could it be that my miraculous power is reborn from the nearest living creature? Ding Wen summed up the laws of the past and couldn't help but come to a conclusion. When he was killed by the Daking faction, he did not die immediately. When he died, the immortals all returned, and the surrounding area was burned by fire. The closest creature he encountered was a silkworm. Other than that, the one who killed him was the closest. And his current immortal body is the one closest to the corpse among the immortals who flew down. Ding Wen hurriedly searched for his memory, and then he felt at ease. Unlike Li Xian, this immortal did not grow up in Daking Xian Shan. Because of his many contributions, he was appreciated by the immortals in the Daking Xian sect, so he was able to join the Xian sect. What this man has done in the past can be summed up in 4 words: sin deserves death. In order to gain the appreciation of immortals, this person killed several friends, and killed many innocent people in order to take exclusive credit and cover up traces. In order to gain performance, you flew down faster than anyone else and actively, but you are a scum. In Ding Wen's thoughts, the momentum of the flying slowed down, and some immortals immediately passed him and flew to the ground first, shouting, "Li Xian is dead." The immortal who was the first to confirm the situation showed the joy of making meritorious deeds in his eyes, while the others who were a little behind were very frustrated and annoyed. With the memory of this immortal body, Ding Wen knew that these were all war immortals, and almost all of them came from the realm. Some of them had excellent aptitudes and were accepted by the income sect since childhood, and most of them entered the immortal mountain through meritorious service. Zhan Xian has many responsibilities. He does everything, and he almost cares about credit and performance. They become immortals because of this. For the immortal faction, their value is to actively do as much as possible. The second batch of immortals who descended one after another did not go to the ground, but suspended at a height of half a zhang from the ground. They did not care about the little merits that were of little value, and they were not so eager to perform. Because these immortals were born in the immortal sect, and at least one of their parents was immortal, even if they did not have outstanding achievements and have been fighting immortals in the lowest level of the 9th level heaven, they are not interested in being active in everything like the immortals from the earth. Small credit also grabs the head. For them, those little credits cannot change anything in substance. If they don't, they have nothing to lose. At this moment, these immortals saw that immortal Li had been put to death, so they talked and speculated, and there were many discussions. The war immortals who came from the realm are like the masters of the immortal master peak and the hall master of the war immortal hall. Their expressions are solemn, and they don't seem to be in the mood to joke at all. Ding Wen was among the battle immortals, listening to the conjectures of the immortals, all of which were not true, and even had all kinds of strange thoughts. Li Xian lost a match a month ago. Could it be that he couldn't think of it because of this matter, and was fascinated by the evil spirit of the immortal extermination society with the fragrance of the soul, and his thoughts of coveting the exquisite heart were magnified 100 times, so he made this kind of thing. Crazy thing! An immortal master said with a serious look about the clues of conjecture. Ding Wen held back his laughter, thinking about how strange this person is. It takes time for the chaotic soul fragrance to take effect, and it can't solve the question that Li Xian did not have the strength to kill 7 in one go. The problem is so obvious, but the immortal is still absurd. Guess speak. Another immortal said, it will take time for the chaotic soul grass to take effect, but if it is supplemented by the unknown evil method of the immortal extermination society, it may not be impossible. Lixian is from this faction, and there is no way it has anything to do with immortal extermination. It must be a middle school. The people in the village said that they saw Li Xian kill people. Of course he doesn't have that kind of strength, but if the other 7 people were actually involved in the plot and couldn't resist for a while, then it would be reasonable. A group of immortals conjectured like this, and after adding the details, they quickly came to a conclusion. The master of the Zhanxian temple in charge said, so things are generally clear, there is a new evil method created by the exterminating immortal society, coveting the treasures that are being refined by the original sect, and plotting against the immortal masters, causing Lixian to lose his mind and kill him. The 7 immortal masters who were powerless to resist died. The people of the destroying immortal society wanted to take away Linglong Xin, but Li Xian was brooding because of the failure of the competition not long ago. The members of the meeting have already been slaughtered in the village, and Linglong Xin can no longer be recovered. If the immortal master peak master has no objection, we will report back to the sect master. That's the truth, of course there is no objection. After saying this, the master of Xianxi Peak led the crowd to fly. The master of Zhanxian Temple arranged for Zhanxian, who was the first to land just now, to lead a few people to take care of the funeral, and left with the rest. Ding Wen thought it was absurd, these two immortals made such a conclusion? In the memory of this immortal, something suddenly appeared. Ding Wen was stunned. Combined with those things, he immediately understood the current conclusion is necessary for both Zhanxian Temple and Xianxi Peak, and the peak master of Xianxi Peak naturally does not responsibility. The responsibility of Zhanxian Temple is also very small. In short, a group of immortals jointly negotiated a conclusion that hello, me, and everyone. It doesn't matter whether the truth is true or not. He originally planned to follow him to Xianshan, but the Zhanxian who left the aftermath called his name. All the other immortals flew away, leaving a dozen or so war immortals. A few were arranged to fly nearby to ensure that no other scouts were nearby. Zhanxian, who took care of the aftermath, asked Ding Wen to go to the village to have a look. After the two flew up, the responsible Zhanxian said with a smile, Yunxian deliberately let me take the lead today. I remember this kindness. If there is anything in trouble, I need help, but it doesn't matter. Ding Wen has been searching for the memory of this immortal body for a long time, and he understands that the battle immortal in front of him is called the battle immortal of Montenegro. Before joining the immortal faction, he was nicknamed the King of Montenegro in the world. They had no conflicts of interest in the past. Recently, the Black Mountain Zhanxian is competing for the rank of the 6th layer Tianzangxian, which is still a critical period. Haishan Zhanxian didn't know that Yungxian had turned into Ding Wen, so he naturally thought that Yungxian was deliberately letting him go first. Of course, the purpose was to need Montenegro Zhangxian's help for other things. They are all from the realm, and they all understand the unspoken rules there is no benefit for nothing, and the benefit must be reciprocated. However, Ding Wen didn't have anything to ask him for help. At this moment, he was busy digesting Yungxian's memory, improving his understanding of the world, the fairy gate, and this world, so he said casually, we'll talk about it later. You can speak at any time. Haishan Zhanxian thought that Yungxian was selling his favor first and using it when he needed it. The two walked around the village, and Zhanxian of Montenegro called the villagers to ask for the details, and told the villagers a few words, and waited for the two groups of Zhanxian who inspected and collected the corpse to come and meet. Not long after, everyone gathered, and everyone flew back to Daking Xianshan together. Ding Wen had the memory of two immortals. He was not curious about it. He just thought that when he entered the immortal mountain, he could get rid of the evil immortals he already knew one by one. The experiences and memories so far made him hate the evil, and now he knows that in the hearts of these evil spirits, they see the good as hypocrisy, and those who are powerless to resist as livestock that deserve to be slaughtered. The fantasy world formed by the barrier of the Daking Immortal Mountain will make people unable to see the Immortal Mountain from a long distance, and its outline and shape can only be seen within a certain distance, but when it is very close, it is surrounded by fog. When entering the fog, it is also a formation. When retrieving identity, the mystery of the formation method is not known by ordinary immortals, and the immortal masters of the artifact refiners only roughly understand with the knowledge of the formation method. The mist formation method is to detect the identity card, star energy characteristics, and body shape of the entering immortal at the same time. Only when it matches the existing information in the formation can pass through the barrier. Ding Wen flew into the fog and was thinking about how to carry out his great plan to eradicate evil spirits in the fairy sect, when a ball of electric light suddenly burst out of thin air around his body. Under the strong electrical stimulation, Ding Wen was paralyzed and unable to move. Did the formation find out that I'm not Unzen? Ding Wen was greatly surprised. He had the memory of an immortal, and he knew that the formations of the immortal sect were all powerful, but he didn't expect to be able to recognize him. The electric light continued, and Ding Wen, who was in it, couldn't even make a scream. Reading www.yuyuganshu.com twitched wildly involuntarily, his consciousness quickly went blank. he was electrocuted and completely forgot who he was, where he was, and what he was doing. The Black Mountain Zhanxian and his party were extremely inexplicable, but the formation clearly touched the defense mechanism, and they had no way to interfere, they could only fly inside to report. However, before they could fly far, they saw a mass of cold air suddenly fly by, and they couldn't help trembling secretly. What the is going on? How could Yongxian trigger such a powerful attack method? Haishan Zhanxian was really inexplicable, but he saw that the cold air surrounded Yongxian and froze it into a large piece of ice. The ice was propelled by the power of the formation, and it flew farther and farther, farther and farther. Immediately afterwards, a golden light shot out from a certain peak in Dakingxian Mountain, quickly caught up with the flying ice, and hit it with a precise hit. The ice cube that had frozen Unzen burst into pieces in an instant, and together with the immortal body and ice inside, turned into smashes. Ding Wen's original plan to enter the Daking immortal sect to assassinate the evil immortals ended before it even started. Ding Wen saw the star map fluttering in the darkness again. Then, the darkness suddenly became light again. Ding Wen found that his body was strange, and his eyes were like insects. He couldn't see the scene, but there was light. Immediately afterwards, I found myself being picked up by something, then wrapped and chewed. Ding Wen's consciousness darkened, but in just a short moment, he saw the starry sky map smashed into some blue light. There was light in his eyes again. He felt a familiar touch, and when he opened his eyes, he saw a woman sticking to him, making some noises that made him miss him, picking up a fat and white worm from the plate, and then going to his mouth. "Hello! Don't even think of feeding me worms." Ding Wen was startled and quickly grabbed the woman's wrist. This action made the glamorous woman startled for a moment, and then she seemed to understand, just like the mysterious girl in Silent Mountain at night, the rhythm was crazy. The bug Ding Wen didn't want to eat it, but the taste of this situation made him have no time to think about anything else. Soon, everything will be calm. Ding Wen lay down, feeling tired too. The glamorous woman raised the bug between her fingers and asked in a soothing voice, "Young master, still eat it? Don't eat it. Don't give me worms to eat in the future." Ding Wen shouted excitedly. He thought that he should have turned into a worm and was eaten by the original owner of the body, and his stomach was churning for a while. Young master has always liked to eat goblin worms. It can strengthen your body and prolong your life. It can also make the young master more heroic. The beautiful woman's voice was not eager. When these words came out, Ding Wen had already passed the memory of this body. Understood many things. This body is the son of a nearby township head. Under the Daking faction, there is one township head in 10 villages, and one township head among several township heads. The glamorous woman in front of her was named Swalian, who was responsible for serving the young master, but she was not a wife and concubine. According to Ding Wen's memory, the young master actually knew that Swalian was the second lady's confidant, but he pretended not to know. The young master's biological mother was long gone, and his father's second wife also had a son. The young master was weak since childhood and knew that the second wife was not a good person, so he voluntarily gave up his father's position early on. This young master neither dared to express himself in front of his father, nor could he practice cultivation because of his frail constitution, and he had no interest in other things, so he kept eating, drinking, and having fun. The second lady saw that he was incompetent, had neither ambition nor ability, so she pretended to have color, showing pity for his early death of his mother, covering up everything, and getting a good image in the eyes of the young master's father. On the surface, the second lady doted on this young master, but she was actually still on guard, so she arranged for her confidant to serve the young master, and in the name of caring about the young master's body, she gave him a lot of strange things to eat. In fact, with this young master's physique, indulging in alcohol and will hurt the body. Taking medicine for a long time and all kinds of strange things will increase the burden on the body, and it will only collapse faster and live shorter. The young master also understood in his heart, but he pretended not to know. He pretended to be obedient and liked every time he ate anything. Later, when he ate goblin worms, he used the excuse to like it and said that it felt effective, and shouted that he would only eat goblin worms in the future. In fact, the young master thinks that, compared to medicine, eating goblin bugs is not harmful to the body. He only eats this to save himself. This young master is also very pitiful. He has dealt with the vicious second lady by himself since he was a child. This snow lotus is charming and gentle and obedient. In fact, he clearly got the second lady's order. I want to kill him quickly. The second lady didn't want the young master to marry and have children. She said that she would let him recover and then marry a wife, and only let Swalian accompany her. Her intentions are really vicious. Ding Wenlei should leave directly. But thinking of what happened to the young master and the fact that the young master always suspected that the death of his biological mother was related to the second lady, Ding Wen felt that he should do it for the young master, but he wished. Just as Ding Wen was thinking, Shuelian handed the goblin bug to his mouth again, and Ding Wen opened it in shock. Shuelian was taken aback and looked at him as if she didn't know him. Insects, I won't eat them again. My body is much better, and I suddenly developed a star chart. I'm already a practitioner. Ding Wen said, punching the wall of the carriage with a punch. Shuelian shouted in fright, stunned for a while, and then clapped her hands in a hurry. Young master is too powerful. Young master is too powerful. Young master, let's go back quickly and make the madam and the village head happy. Okay. Ding Wenke was not afraid to see them, so Shuelian called for the driver to come over. The carriage was running, and Shuelian next to Ding Wen was eager to find out what was the difference between practicing the star map. Her beautiful face and her eyes sparkled with curiosity, which made her body temperature feel extra warm. Aware of Ding Wen's state, Shuelian's slender hands began to knead with familiarity. There's no reason to refuse this. Ding Wen happily accepted. It's just that the interest comes quickly and disappears quickly. Compared to the vigor of the silent hill boy who fought all night, this young master is really far behind. However, Shuelian had a satisfied look on her face, and said in surprise, young master has become so powerful after practicing the star map. He wasn't so brave after taking those recipes before. Ding Wen compared the battle situation in the young master's past memory for a moment, and it was really like this. The carriage ran by, the dust was flying, and the broken car hole could see the figure of working in the field outside constantly passing by. Shuelian cleaned up for Ding Wen. Seeing him looking out of the car thoughtfully, his eyes were bright and his spirits were bright, completely different from the depression in the past, and he liked the wonderful experience just now. He couldn't help feeling that the young master in front of him suddenly became a star map realm. The whole person has a new look, and the sudden change makes her fascinated. Shuelian blushed inexplicably. For some reason, she threw all the bugs back into the box and was about to throw them out the window when Ding Wen hurriedly said, put them on the tree later. Do birds eat them too? Put it on a tree. Life and death follow the fate of life and death. If it enters the belly of a bird, the life of the bird will continue. It is more meaningful than suffocating in a box and dying in a box. Ding Wen was a worm. When I have been a bird, I have such a feeling. Shuelian was stunned when she heard it, and even felt that the familiar young master suddenly became more strange, but these strangeness made her inexplicably like it, so she put down the box, looked at Ding Wen with surprise in her eyes, and said, where did the young master hear this from? What? I'm inseparable from the young master, why don't you know? Sudden idea. Ding Wen paused, then said, you often go out alone at night, and it's not that you haven't been separated all day. Shuelian was silent for a while. She didn't expect the young master to suddenly reveal it. She also suspected that reporting to the second lady every night might have been noticed by the young master long ago, but don't say it, okay? Young master, don't think too much. Young master is as always, and Shuelian is willing to serve her for life. I'm afraid that when you get old in the future, young master will not like Suolian anymore. Ding Wen imagined Suolian's situation, and knew that the mastermind behind the scenes was the key, and it didn't matter what Suolian's heart was originally, because she had no choice but to do it herself. These words sounded clearly dissuaded and concerned, fearing that he would choose from the second lady's malice. Suolian, how long have you served me? Ding Wen deliberately asked her. 8 years, 3 months, and 3 days. The young master came to bully Suolian when he was 13 years old. It was raining outside that day. Suolian remembered that it was a bit sudden at the time. After knowing that the second lady would not let the young master have it, she had to keep thinking about it and kept taking medicine according to the second lady's instructions to prevent pregnancy. Ding Wen saw that Suolian really remembered and wanted to give her a chance, so he said, Suolian, I have a promise for you, are you willing to give me your future? Suolian was stunned, shook her head, and sighed softly, young master, don't think about these impossible things, these are not things that the young master can call the shots. It is gratifying that the young master has developed a star map, but the township chief is beside him. How many people with a star map cultivation base? The young master is as always, and Suolian is willing to serve him all the time. You mean, whether you want it or not, whether I want it or not, I have to endure it. Ding Wen looked at Suolian, a little disappointed and angry at her attitude. Young master's life is not good, and Suolian is even more blessed. That's how she was born, she is destined to have to endure. It doesn't matter what we think, because we can't be the master, we can only endure if we want to survive. Keep it up. Suolian really felt that the young master in front of her suddenly became unfamiliar, and even her thoughts became strange. You say life is so hard, why would you rather be prepared to endure it all the time, rather than take risks for change? Ding Wen felt that Suolian's words were too contradictory. If you cherish life, patience is understandable, so you shouldn't say so miserable. Of course people can live without wanting to die. Didn't the young master endure it all the time? Why don't you want to endure it? Suolian asked in a tit-for-tat response. She felt the pain of being stabbed, but she didn't think it was a problem. What's wrong? If it's for the sake of hope, I think I should, but this is hopeless patience, and of course it shouldn't continue. Since the second lady doesn't give me hope, why should I endure it? It's better to burn all the jade and stone, and make her pay the price. Ding Wen pondered that if he was the young master, he might have to endure when he was young and weak. When he grew up, he would not endure it a few years ago, or go out, or die with the second lady, so there is no hope. Be patient. Suolian hurriedly covered his mouth and said, young master, please don't talk nonsense. It would be incredible if the second lady knew. Suolian should only pretend that she has never heard of it, and young master should only pretend that she has never said it. Ding Wen saw Suolian in a hurry, and suddenly smiled. Suolian, who was full of smiles, blushed inexplicably. She quickly lowered her head to avoid it, and couldn't help but ask, Suolian is worried about the young master, but what is the young master laughing at? If everyone wasn't so tolerant, there wouldn't be so much excessive oppression, and there wouldn't be so much outrageous evil. Young master's words are light, everyone wants to live. Suolian thought this kind of words funny. Immortals are afraid of living alone, and they can live if they can't bear it. Ding Wen saw Suolian's confused face, and felt that he was talking too much. He knew the memories of the two immortals, but Suolian didn't. The carriage stopped. After getting off the car, Suolian happily said to the housekeeper, quickly tell the head of the township and his wife www.mtlnovel.com the young master has eaten his body and bones with the medicine given by his wife, and he has developed a star map. The housekeeper was stunned and looked at Ding Wen in disbelief. Everyone in the mansion knew that this young master must be a short-lived ghost, but suddenly he developed a star map? Suolian urged again, and the butler pretended to be overjoyed and ran in screaming and shouting. Immediately, everyone in the manor knew about it. The mansion held a large banquet to celebrate this, which seemed to be extravagant, but in fact, the second lady and the township capital wanted to take the opportunity to receive congratulatory gifts. Ding Wen planned to check for the original owner of this body whether his mother's death had anything to do with the second lady, and was very happy to have Suolian by his side every day. Immortal sex magic tricks. Ding Wen practiced diligently every day to make his body more agile. The second lady looked at it a few times with concern, but her face became worse day by day. Ding Wen was tired from practicing today, so he rested and ate as usual. Unexpectedly, when I walked into the room, I found that Suolian's face was wrong. There was another person in the room, who was passing the dishes from the kitchen. The woman's face was expressionless. Her usual round eyes were half open at this time. Little Lord. Before Ding Wen sat down, he smelled a sour and stinky smell on the table. Ding Wen took a closer look. A plate of chicken, the meat was all eaten up, only the bones were left. Looking more closely, there were still a few chicken butts, but when I got closer, I found that the stench on the dining table was emanating from this plate. As for the other side, there was a plate of sour tofu, 2 servings of sour rice, and a plate of rotten vegetable leaves. Young master, let's eat quickly. The woman in the kitchen said sternly. With this posture, she wanted to watch Ding Wenquan finish eating.